So, did you guys ask for the next part? Alright, let's get to it. And poor Jiggle is inconsolable, because he got badly beaten by Satan. But Kangwoo is the picture of happiness, since his plan worked perfectly. And there he is, shining in the background, totally sure that no one will ever suspect him. But then Kimmy speaks up to everyone. Hold on, what happened to the fisher seeds that were being stored? Jiggle, with red liquid dripping from his nose, lowers his head and apologizes, because he failed to protect them. And everyone is shocked since they were keeping more than 100 fisher seeds. But back there, it's all smiles, because the mischief is done and over with. And while Kangwoo licks his lips, Gaia asks everyone how Satan managed to carry all of that by himself, since those seeds were huge. And Jiggle says that Satan didn't take just one or two, he took all of them. And worse, he doesn't even know how Satan did it. But Kangwoo, licking his lips, keeps thinking about how those fisher seeds were really delicious. And what's more, when he absorbed all those fisher seeds, a kind of demonic energy, much deeper than before, was released. And after that, the system informed Kangwoo that the seal on the core of the 10,000 demons had weakened. As a result, the demonic energy inside him increased by 3 points. Kangwoo is pure happiness, because gaining 3 points of demonic energy after already having more than 120 is truly surprising, and Gaia, feeling very guilty, apologizes, since all of this happened because of her mistake, and Kangwoo, a bit suspicious, looks at her. Then Gaia continues. Gaia says she let her guard down and that all the seeds Kangwoo gathered with so much effort were lost in an instant, but Kangwoo isn't about to let her take the blame. So he says, Miss Gaia, no, it's definitely not your fault. The responsibility for guarding those seeds belonged to all of us. And Gaia is actually moved to have the tough Kangwoo comforting her. Kangwoo also says that what really matters is learning from mistakes, and that they will never make this kind of mistake again. As Kangwoo leaves that place, he states that Satan is strong, even though he's a bit weakened after traveling between dimensions. And Kangwoo says that Satan is very cruel, because earlier he provoked Alex Osborne by using his trauma as a weapon. And Kangwoo says that they can't let their guard down for a single moment, because Satan is truly evil and is always lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then, Kangwoo, looking at Grace, says that what's left now is for them to become even stronger so they can put an end to this evil once and for all. And poor Gaia, after hearing these comforting words, is moved to tears. Kimmy is also moved, because even after this tragedy, his older brother still has words of comfort. And Kangwoo says that under no circumstances can they repeat the same mistakes. And so, Kangwoo says that they need to become much stronger in order to face the demon of the prophecy, since Satan has proven to be someone far more powerful than they thought. And then, Kangwoo, raising his hand to the sky, makes a promise to everyone. He clenches his fist, vowing to protect this world together with all the guardians, and that neither Satan nor anyone else will be able to destroy this world. Then, the scene shifts to the demon king Valzark. This lich was known as the Zenith of Liches, and he ruled the land of the dead with absolute authority. Valzark's army was incredibly powerful, and there was no one in the land of Eleanor who could stand against him. He was known as the symbol of fear in the kingdom of Eleanor. And Valzark lived up to that reputation, because the few unfortunate souls who tried to face him realized complete hopelessness, as many strong warriors came to challenge him, but he annihilated them all by himself. And here we have the last group, who thought it would be easy to face Valzark, but now they are completely surrounded and totally out of mana. And the one thinking about all of this is Valzark himself, since he was the most powerful being in the kingdom of Eleanor. But now, he's like this, being humiliated and unable to bear such overwhelming shame any longer. And so, he keeps asking himself how much longer he, the Demon King Valzark, will have to put up with all of this. And to make matters worse, he's dressed as a maid, but Valzark is determined. He's not going to just sit there feeling sorry for himself, because what he needs to do is make a decision and change his current situation. So, getting up quickly and heading out to confront that person, he thinks to himself that he can't go on living like this anymore. And so, the Demon King Valzark starts banging hard on Kangwoo's door and says, "Master, I need to talk to you." And before Kangwoo could open the door or let him in, Valzark quickly enters Kangwoo's room. And very seriously, he says to Kangwoo, "Master, there's something that's been bothering me for a long time. I wanted to keep this to myself a little longer, but I just can't take it anymore. So, I came to talk to you." And Kangwoo, sitting on the bed, starts thinking, what does he want to talk to me about? Why does he seem so angry? Valzark, with teary eyes, says to Kangwoo, "Master, how many times have I told you not to mess with the washing machine, huh? I've already told you this, but you're so stubborn, master. Look, let me tell you, do you know how important it is to me to be able to wash your clothes and take care of you, master?" Do you know that?" And Valzark says this while holding a very strange object in his hand, and Kangwoo, who didn't know about this, apologizes to Valzark. Then, Valzark turns his back and leaves that place, giving Kangwoo a warning. "Master, never again put your socks inside out in the washing machine, okay?" "I didn't like that." After saying this, Valzark leaves humming and says to Kangwoo, Master, if you do that, next time I'll be able to fold the laundry much more efficiently. Then Kangwoo, with a surprised and confused look on his face, stands there thinking, huh, did he go crazy? I didn't understand anything. But Kangwoo looks ahead and the redhead is laughing so hard her stomach hurts, and she says to him, Kangwoo, I was already finding your summoning hilarious. A zombie wearing an apron, but is this for real? Did he tell his master not to leave his socks inside out? Is that what he said? Are you messing with me, Kangwoo? And so, the redhead laughs so hard she can't even look at Kangwoo. So, the beautiful redhead, even with tears streaming down her face from laughing so much, keeps teasing Kangwoo. He says, Redhead, can we get back to our conversation? Forget what Valzak said, okay? And she says, yes, of course. But watch out for May, okay? She tells Kangwoo that she did all the investigating she could, but couldn't find any more activity from the demonic order, and assures Kangwoo that she'll keep looking into it. And Kangwoo finds that strange, because the demonic cult has been inactive for a while now, even though he knows that, while the damage was minimized, the Gaia system was still weakened by it. So Kangwoo's doubts only grow, because if the cult's goal is to weaken the Gaia system, why have they stopped acting and gone quiet? Because they achieved their goal. But while he's thinking about that, the redhead asks him, Kangwoo, have you heard that the demon of prophecy changed his appearance to a human form? What do you think, huh? What do you think he looks like? Then Kangwoo starts to sweat. The redhead says something that catches Kangwoo's attention. She says that since the demonic order has been very quiet, she needs to investigate what human form Satan has transformed into. Then Kangwoo is shocked, because even that this woman already knows, but hiding it well, he says to her, Hey, redhead, I don't think that's very important, because if Satan has allied himself with the demonic order, they're probably helping him hide. But inside, he keeps thinking that there's no reason for Satan to be in Korea. But the redhead, standing up, agrees with Kangwoo. And since they're done talking, she says she's leaving. Kangwoo tries to cheer her up, telling her to just focus on the demonic order, because the moment he finds them, he'll find Satan. And she, with her hands still in her pocket, says she'll do that. And Kangwoo started thinking, huh? But what? The girl, standing by the door, says she has a suspicion. Because the speed at which you, Kangwoo, got strong is really unusual. And it's also very suspicious that you disappeared for 5 years. Then, she looks at him and says, I think you're the demon of the prophecy, and just stares at our protagonist. Kangwoo is completely thrown off, like, how did this woman already figure it out? But suddenly she says, you get this serious, huh? It was just a joke, silly. Then, she shuts the door and leaves. On the other side of the door, still laughing a lot, she says, Kangwoo, you really made my day. I laugh so much my stomach hurts. Hey, I have to get back to work, okay? Bye. Kangwoo is still stunned, because her question was so unexpected that he couldn't even hide his reaction properly. But at that moment, his Olaphone 17 Plus Ultra starts ringing. Then he sees that it's a call from the Guardians and starts wondering, huh? Is something going on? And Say, standing with his hand in his pocket, answers the phone and says, Hi, who's calling? And the person says something to Kangwoo, and he gets really shocked and says, huh? What? Is that for real? I'm heading there right now. So it's not explained what exactly was said to Kangwoo, just that a new anomaly had occurred in that dungeon. So, everyone gathered in that well-known Rank S dungeon, the same place where they killed Al Kilo. Finally, the tough guy enters the dungeon, wanting to know why he was called in such a hurry. And there they are, Kimmy, Gaia, and Grace. And the tough guy, showing up in style, asks, so, where's the anomaly you guys mentioned? Kinney takes a step back and says, it's right here, look. And Kangwoo's eyes go wide, like, how is that thing even here? Kangwoo realizes that this dimensional crack isn't unfamiliar to him, because this green crack has shown up for him a few times before, but then the crack starts to grow and a green glow appears deep inside it. And Kangwoo, looking at it, starts thinking, wait a minute, I know where this crack is from. But then, an even brighter light starts coming out of that crack, and it seems to have forgotten just how big it really is. And it seems like something really powerful is coming out of that crack. And that caught the attention of Earth's heroes. Grace and Kimmy immediately get into fighting stance, because they don't know what's going to come out of that crack, since those two would risk their lives to protect Gaia from any danger. Then, a scion comes out from inside the crack, and they realize that it's not a monster crossing the dimensions. Then, a blonde person, wearing a very beautiful suit of armor, steps out of the crack. And he speaks in a language that no one understands. Since no one is understanding him, he speaks even louder. Hey, mama put sugar on me. Everyone is confused, not understanding a word he's saying. He says it again. Hey, mama put sugar on me. And Kimmy, not understanding that language, looks at Gaia and says, Hey Gaia, do you understand anything he's saying? Then that very well-dressed person starts casting a spell on himself. And after that he says, Hey, can you hear me now? Can you understand me? Then everyone understands and says, Yes, we can understand you. Who are you? Then that blonde guy, the protagonist, starts to introduce himself. He says, My name is Ronaldo. Wait a second, this guy has already appeared in our story. Didn't he die? Huh, did he come back? And the blonde guy continued his introduction. He said he was the third prince of the Arnott Empire. And guy says, "Ha, what did you say? Arnott Empire? Where is that?" Kangwoo immediately catches on. And he starts thinking, wait a minute, wasn't this the guy who came out of the portal when Denizinia came here? That bastard, I thought he was dead. So, Kangwoo clearly remembers the soldier from another world, who crawled out of that portal after Denizinia. And so, Kangwoo finds himself in trouble, because how is this bastard here? So, while Ronaldo walks toward them, Kangwoo turns away and starts coming up with a plan. I think I forgot his name, okay? And the blonde guy says that the Arnott Empire is a nation on the continent of Eleanor. And Kangwoo, right away, puts his hand in his pocket and pulls out his mask, because now he has to disguise himself so he won't be recognized. But after getting a little closer, Ronaldo lights up and says, "Hey, so it was you, wasn't it?" And then, suddenly, he kneels in front of Gaia and says, "The god from the other world, Tyrion, mentioned your name, Gaia. So, you are the incarnation of that goddess." Ronaldo, reaching his hands out toward Gaia, says that this can only be fate. And so, with a love-struck look taking her hand, let's change this blonde guy's name. Ronaldo says it's a pleasure to meet her. So Kimmy, seeing that scene, immediately gets really annoyed, because that very handsome guy came out of the portal and started hitting on her beloved right in front of her. And Ronaldo, reaching his hands out to Gaia, says that their meeting could only be the work of fate. And he tells her, "I came to meet you." And Gaia is very surprised, because out of nowhere this guy took her hand and seems to be interested in her. And Gaia, still surprised, says that she really doesn't understand anything. So she asks, "Who are you?" Meanwhile, Kangwoo in the back is breathing a sigh of relief, because if he had taken 1 second longer to put on that mask, he definitely would have been recognized. So Gaia asks Ronaldo, "Where is the continent of Eleanor?" And before he can answer, Kangwoo starts cursing him out in his head, because this bastard came out of the portal and is now right in front of him, trying to ruin his peace. So the blonde guy, kneeling down and still holding Gaia's hand, explains everything, while Kangwoo tells himself that he can't understand why he crossed dimensions, since there's nothing for this guy to do here. And it seems like Gaia heard Kangwoo's thoughts. So she asks Ronaldo, "Hey, Knight, what brings you to Earth?" Ronaldo explains that he came to Earth for a reason, to defeat the demon king who escaped from his world and ended up in this one. And then we're shown a being riding on top of a bone dragon. And the warrior Ronaldo says that his mission on planet Earth is to defeat the demon king Volzic once and for all, since he escaped here. Gaia is surprised and says, "Huh, demon king Volzic?" While she's surprised, Kangwoo is about to lose his mind, because everyone around him has already seen Volzic. However, only Alice knows that the name of her summon is Volzic, because everyone else just thinks Kangwoo summoned a low-level skeleton, since that skeleton basically became a house servant, wearing an apron and everything. They have no idea that the skeleton wearing a pink apron is actually the demon king of the continent of Eleanor, the most feared being in that place, Volzic the Invincible. So, Kangwoo decides to do his best in order to be able to choose Volzic. Ronaldo explains that, according to Tyrion, the demon king Volzic sold his soul to a demon from another world, and that's why he crossed dimensions. And Gaia is surprised and says, "Ha, a demon from another world?" And she says that Volzic sold his soul to the pinnacle of all demons, the supreme demon. And this demon is so powerful that he has the demon sea within himself. And Kangwoo, upon hearing this, starts to sweat and thinks, "That bastard! He knows everything about my life." However, Kangwoo knows one thing. Even if Ronaldo calls him a demon in front of everyone, he stays calm, because he's above any suspicion. So Kangwoo doesn't plan to slip up and doesn't give any chance to be recognized. And so Kangwoo does what he always does and says, "It's Satan, right? It can only be him." And everyone pays close attention and says, "Huh, what?" Of course, Kangwoo is going to pin the blame for all of this on his scapegoat, Satan. And so, Kimmy is the first to fall for that nonsense and says, "Yeah, it can only be Satan." And Gaia also falls for that lie and agrees, saying that there's no one in this world as strong as Satan. There's no one else in this world who could do something like that, making a demon king from another world their subordinate. Then Ronaldo, really surprised, says, "What? The demon with the greatest knowledge is Satan?" And Kimmy says that they can't be sure, but the demon who stands above all other demons is definitely Satan. He says this with a lot of hatred in his heart, because Satan left a very deep mark on his soul. But Kangwoo is really happy, because his pet did a great job just now. After a long time, Ronaldo finally lets go of Gaia's hand and says that meeting her was truly fate. Then, a little sad and downcast, Ronaldo acknowledges his own smallness and says that he can't defeat the demon king Volzic on his own. So he asks them to form an alliance, because if they join forces, they'll definitely have enough power to defeat the demon king Volzic. Ronaldo says that he is a disciple of the hero god Tyrion and says, "In his name, I came to protect you, Gaia." Suddenly, Gaia starts to raise her aura and everyone gets scared, because a very powerful sacred energy is emanating from her. And then she says, "What? This feeling." And that lasts for a few seconds. Then she says, "Oh, okay, I understood. So that's what you want, huh? Alright. Goodbye. Call me, okay?" Kimmy, quite surprised, says, "Miss Gaia, what happened?" Suddenly, the little man began to shine. She says, "Oh, okay, that was a phone call. I mean, that was a confirmation of Tyrion's will, that Reynaldo spoke to me. What he told me to say. The god Tyrion asked me to fight against the demons alongside Reynaldo. So this confirms everything, that Reynaldo was sent by this god." And then she says, "So, Reynaldo, I'm not sure that meeting you was fate. But I think meeting you was just pure luck." But he keeps insisting, saying, "No, it's not luck, it's destiny. He's got his eye on someone else's woman, huh? You see that, right?" Kimmy just won't open his eyes, will he? Because Reynaldo is shining with pure love over Gaia. And Kangwoo, noticing this, is already scheming a way to get rid of this guy. Because if he gets recognized, it's all over. But Kangwoo knows that since Reynaldo is a disciple of a god, he's definitely an ally in the fight against the demons. Because their goal is the same, to protect this land from being destroyed by demons. And for sure, he's not crazy like that bastard Elcashorn, so I can't just kill him. So, Kangwoo is kind of stuck, because if they're allies, he has to keep the mask on all day. Then, he realizes that his time is running out. So, looking at Kimmy, Kangwoo suddenly sees a way out and says, "What?" Looks like Kimmy is jealous. He gives a smile and says, "I know exactly what I'm going to do," because Kangwoo remembers very well what happened at their first meeting. That Reynaldo guy was in very good company. And that mage definitely liked him a lot. So, since this guy already had a woman, why would he go after Kimmy's first love? So, Kangwoo is not going to let his pet get left behind. And Kangwoo's plan against Reynaldo isn't because he's afraid Reynaldo will discover his identity. It's because Kimmy is his friend, and a friend always helps another. So, Kangwoo comes up with a plan to get Reynaldo out of Kimmy's way. And with that, he picks up his phone and mentally communicates with his summons. And Reynaldo is so attracted to Gaia that only now does he notice Kangwoo back there. So he says, "Hey, who's that guy behind Miss Gaia? Is he your disciple too?" She says, "Oh no, this one? He's not my disciple, no. He's someone who joined the Guardians quite some time ago. Even though he isn't a protector chosen by a god, he's more righteous in his heart than anyone else. He's an admirable person." Reynaldo introduces himself to Kangwoo, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. And Kangwoo, who already has a plan in mind to help his friend Kimmy, doesn't mind getting his hands dirty. Then, with the most cynical look in the world, he says, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Kangwoo." Then the scene shifts to the Guardians' training room. And Kimmy is really amazed, because he didn't know that such a big place like this existed in the Hall of the Guardians. And Gaia, not modest at all, says that she just hadn't shown him that place yet because there hadn't been any need for him to visit it. And then Kimmy, looking at Kangwoo, says, "But Kangwoo, is it okay if we don't stay by Reynaldo's side right now?" Kangwoo, who looks like he's up to something, took his Unison Austin phone away from his ear. And then he answers Kimmy, "Yes, it's totally fine. That was actually a request Reynaldo made." So he remembers the request. Reynaldo said that starting tomorrow, they would search for the Demon King Valzok separately. Also, Gaia invited Reynaldo to settle in at the Hall of the Guardians, since there are plenty of empty rooms there, and he won't feel uncomfortable. And of course he accepted, right? After all, he's got his eye on Gaia, since she's not just any woman, she's the incarnation of a goddess. So, Kangwoo tells Kimmy that it was Reynaldo who asked him to be alone, because he was going to receive a revelation. Then, Kangwoo starts casting a spell with his hands and tells Kimmy that he wanted to test something. And Kimmy says, "What?" Kangwoo, summoning his great sword Gram, the dragon slayer, looks at Kimmy and says, "I'm going to test if we can handle Satan right now." Then, Kangwoo looks at Kimmy and notices that he's feeling really down. But Kangwoo tells Kimmy that he sensed something coming from Reynaldo and realized how important it is to be chosen by God. Then Kangwoo says, "Kimmy, look at me. You don't need to feel small, because inside you lives the soul of a martial god. And if Reynaldo could do it, you definitely can too." And Kimmy gets really excited to hear that from his friend Kangwoo. So, putting his sadness aside, Kimmy tells his friend Kangwoo that he's right. And so, he gets ready to draw his sword. Kangwoo says this is the first duel with Kimmy like this. But now, the two of them need to test each other's strength. So, Kangwoo asks Grace and Gaia to step back a little. And only now does Gaia understand what Kangwoo wants. But inside, Kangwoo is thinking about something else. For example, that's why he called them over there. Because, actually, for his plan to work, he needs to separate these two from Reynaldo. And Kangwoo tells us that this phone earring is all Valzok's invention, since it allows him to communicate with his summons over long distances. And what's more, he just has to think about communicating, and his summons instantly understand his will. So, Kangwoo mentally calls out to Valzok. "Valzok, Yunli?" Immediately, Kangwoo is answered and hears, "Yes, master, I'm listening." The preparations here, Valzark, are already complete, okay? So you can go ahead and do your part. And Valzark, now dressed in his Demon King outfit, tells Kangwoo that he will start the plan right away. And little Edina, who looks absolutely adorable and cute in her costume, tells Kangwoo with great excitement that she's going to work hard too. Then, while Kangwoo is finishing his sentence, Kimmy charges at him at full speed. And Kangwoo, noticing that Kimmy is completely focused, waits for the clash to see how much he has grown. Because now, the mischief is about to begin. So, a little ways off, but still in the Hall of the Guardians, Reynaldo is glowing like a firefly, because he's waiting to receive a revelation from the god Tyrion. We're told that he always glows like that whenever he prays to Tyrion, and he knows that the revelation is coming soon. But then, something breaks Reynaldo's concentration, and he realizes it's the beginning of the revelation. And he sees the scene of a poor child being electrocuted, screaming a lot, trapped in a cage in a very dark place, and he realizes that it's the Demon King Valzark who's doing this. And Reynaldo hears Valzark speaking to the child. Go on, little girl, scream, because I'm really enjoying this. I love hearing children cry. Go on. And with that, he shocks the child even more. In his vision, Reynaldo saw a poor little girl being tortured by Valzark. And then Valzark speaks to Reynaldo. Hey, warrior, I'm sure you're watching me, because I know right now you must be having a vision of the place where I am. So I want you to watch me kill this girl. And that beautiful child does her part, saying that she's suffering a lot and begs for help. Then little Edna looks shocked and says, No, Fofoko, don't do this. And the electricity starts to surge even stronger in that place. Then, an even more devastating bolt of lightning passes through the child's body, and she screams with all her might. Reynaldo, who is witnessing that vision, can't hold himself back and says, Valzark, you bastard, what are you doing? And Valzark doesn't stop. He keeps smiling and says to Reynaldo, Did you really think you could face me just because you received Tyrion's blessing? Did you think anything would change just because you met Gaia's subordinates? Hey, Reynaldo, did you forget who I am? I'm the Demon King who killed thousands and thousands of people. Now, I'm going to finish off this little girl right in front of you. Then the evil scum Valzark challenges Reynaldo. Hey, hero, if you want to save this little girl, come here alone. Let's see if you can face me. But suddenly, Valzark's cloak opens up a little and we can see the really cute pink apron he's wearing. But Valzark doesn't get flustered by this. He says, Warrior, let's see if you can get here in time. Reynaldo reaches Valzark just as he picks up that little innocent child in his arms, and sweet little Edna is making a really strange face. Whose face? A face like a sad little shell or a face like an embarrassed shell? Valzark, noticing this, looks at her and says, Edna, hang in there just a little longer, okay? Soon that idiot will be here. And she, holding firmly to her role as the victim, says yes, that she'll hold on. And when Valzark sees a golden light appearing in the sky, he tells little Edna to hold on just a bit longer, because if that bastard notices, the master's plan will be ruined. Then, faster than a meteor, Reynaldo streaks across the sky. And he arrives with a lot of power, showing that his strength has increased a lot, and Valzark keeps playing his role as the evil villain. So, Reynaldo, striking a superhero pose, shows up already looking angry at Valzark. And the scumbag, smiling right in his face, says, Well, huh? So you finally showed up. And little Edna almost gives away the plan because she accidentally starts calling Valzark by his name. But then she remembers, and lets out a desperate scream. And Reynaldo, seeing that torture, gets even angrier at Valzark. And sweet, cute little Edna is there. Please, help me, hero. This skeleton is really evil. Valzark, wearing his little pink apron, is there making an evil scumbag face. So, while Reynaldo is looking at that little child, Valzark laughs in his face and says, Hey, Reynaldo, so you want to save this little girl? But to save her, you can't just stand there. Come at me, come on. Didn't you want to kill me? I'm right here in front of you. Meanwhile, sweet and cute little Edna shows she's a brilliant actress and starts crying her eyes out. And that really gets to Reynaldo. He says, Valzark, step away from her now. And Valzark says, What, you think I'm going to do that just because you told me to? You're pathetic, you know that? She's just a girl. Why does taking someone's life make you so angry? But Reynaldo isn't there to talk. Drawing his big sword, he says to Valzark, You bastard, I'm going to finish you right now. But Valzark is the ultimate scumbag and just starts grinning at Reynaldo's attitude. Then Valzark says his famous line, Rise. And with that, he summons his army of the undead. And suddenly, several footsteps are heard, coming toward Valzark. A huge army of the unregistered appears there, and they're all really angry because they died virgins, since they didn't hit the like button or subscribe to the channel. So, Valzark knows his army will grow today, because you're watching this video right now and still haven't subscribed, so you'll definitely become part of this undead army. And even worse, you'll die a virgin. Valzark gives an order to his army. Go over there and tear the flesh from that insolent one. Rip him apart completely. So, that very curious army lets out a war cry and charges at the hero. But Reynaldo, gripping his sword with intense hatred, says that Valzark is disgust.
Before, because he takes a fragile girl and uses her as a hostage. And that's something he can't accept. So, charging like lightning toward Valzar, he says he won't forgive this, because that bastard is going to meet his end today. And so, with his eyes burning with hatred, the hero Reynaldo starts slicing through that pile of unsubscribed ones. And then the battle gets intense, because Valzark's army is actually really big, but the hero shows he's not as weak as he used to be and cuts through several of the unsubscribed ones. However, two other pretty upset unsubscribed ones charge at the hero, since obeying the orders of the Demon King Valzark is the only reason for their existence. But the hero starts destroying skeleton after skeleton, showing that his power has increased a lot since their last battle, and Valzark is there, holding little Ednazinha under his arms and laughing a lot, and then he says to her, "I never imagined I'd get involved with that guy again." And sweet little Ednazinha, still in her emergency snack position, says to Valzark, "Valzark, can you beat this guy on your own? Do you want me to help you?" And Valzark laughs at her question and says to her, "Oh, little one, who do you think I am? I am the one who made the continent of Eleanor tremble in fear. I am the worst of all nightmares." And Ednazinha cuts him off and says, "Valzark, can you beat him or not? Answer me." Valzark says that if it were in the past, he could have beaten Reynaldo, but now it definitely won't be easy, because Reynaldo has become a hero who received Tyrion's blessing. And Reynaldo is there, eyes shining, slicing through several skeletons. And Valzark says to Ednazinha, if it weren't for her being used as a hostage, this fight would already be over, because Reynaldo is much stronger now. And Ednazinha says, "Wait, so he's going to beat you?" Valzark says that Reynaldo may have gotten stronger, but my power has also increased many, many times thanks to our master. And now I'm going to show you just how much my power has grown. And then a sinister energy sneaks its way toward Reynaldo, and the hero, busy fighting, doesn't even notice the danger approaching. Suddenly, several hands belonging to unregistered virgins grab Reynaldo's foot, immobilizing him and turning him into an easy target. And so, Valzark tells Ednazinha that she doesn't need to interfere. He is more than enough to take down this enemy. And then he says, "Well, unless some miracle happens, right, Ednazinha? Because the way I'm so strong right now, taking down Reynaldo is going to be really easy." So Reynaldo, with his foot trapped by that ability, feels death closing in. Then, red liquid spreads right across his screen. And I don't think it's the skull that's bleeding. Then, an echo is heard across that battlefield. "Unless a miracle happens, unless a miracle happens, unless a miracle happens." And then everything goes dark and a voice is heard. "My son, wake up." And so we see that Reynaldo has died and his soul has been transported to a dimension where someone speaks to him, and Reynaldo realizes that this is Tyrion's voice. And so, in his thoughts, Reynaldo knows that he has lost and he apologizes, because he made a mistake. He thought he was strong enough to face Valzark. But the strength of that demon king increased many times over, because after he became a subordinate of Satan, he became 10 times stronger. But God Tyrion shows that he is just and says to him, "How can you call that a mistake? You fought for the life of a young woman, and that is not a mistake. That is heroism. And if you don't know, I am a hero god." Then Reynaldo remembers that once again he couldn't protect him, and he sees his city in flames, which he tried in vain to defend from Valzark's clutches, because that scum destroyed everything in that city and killed thousands and thousands of people. And last time, countless innocent people were killed. And this time, this fragile, innocent girl will also be killed, and I couldn't do anything. Then, a golden finger of a god approaches Reynaldo's soul, and the god Tyrion speaks to him, "My young friend, the first time we met, you told me that you wanted to save everyone and that you would live for the weak." And so we are shown the god Tyrion, a winged and radiant being who emanates pure divine energy. Then this god speaks to Reynaldo, "Hey, don't you think that after making those promises, falling apart in a place like this would be a complete disgrace?" And so the god Tyrion begins to imbue Reynaldo with his power. He tells Reynaldo that he still has a chance to save the girl. And then Reynaldo's eyes start to shine with a very intense golden light, and the skeletons that were piercing Reynaldo's body notice that something has changed, because the hero's body suddenly began to glow. Tyrion says to Reynaldo, "Although the price to pay is high, if it's for your son, that's something you can accept." And a pillar of light emerges from Reynaldo's body, and then the hero god Tyrion says to Reynaldo, "My son, I will lend you my power." Then a beautiful golden wing unfolds in that place. So the god Tyrion, pouring much of his power onto Reynaldo, tells Reynaldo to offer his conviction to the light. And this time it even seemed like Reynaldo was reborn, because he was buffed with the power of a god, and those unregistered ones who were near him were completely shattered and sent back to hell. And Valzark thinks to himself, that's bad, huh? Because I really messed up, didn't I? That must have been a miracle of the god Tyrion. And now, Reynaldo is way more buffed, almost looking like an angel, since he even has a halo. What's more, the wounds he suffered have already completely healed. And the holy energy that Reynaldo is radiating is truly very powerful. Because of this, the Lich starts to get scared, realizing that Ronaldo has received Tyrion's power and has finally awakened as a true hero. So, while Vazark is looking at Ronaldo, he starts to disappear right in front of him, and Vazark thinks this is really strange. Then the Demon King Vazark stands there wondering, where did he go? I didn't even see. But suddenly, he senses danger appearing behind him. So he quickly turns around to see what's happening. And of course, Vazark takes a hard hit and goes flying far away. And what's more, it was so strong that even the poor hostage fell nearby, screaming a lot, and sweet little Edna gets worried and says, Vazark. But before she can finish saying his name, the hero has already picked her up in his arms and says he's really happy. But little Edna is nothing but worry. The hero of the god Tyrion, Ronaldo, is very pleased and tells that little girl that he didn't think he'd be able to protect her. However, now that he has Tyrion's blessing, he knows he can do amazing things. But little Edna is fuming with anger. She looks at Ronaldo and thinks to herself, how dare you lay your filthy hands on me, you bastard. She has only one thought, disgusting, disgusting, I'm going to kill you. Then, for a split second, little Edna loses control and starts to transform into a dragon. But Vazark speaks to her telepathically, Edna, calm down, okay? Your identity can't be discovered, because if you keep this up, you'll end up causing trouble for our master. And she, pretty upset, says, yeah, I know. And so, Edna, standing next to Ronaldo, thanks him for saving her life. Then he unties sweet Edna and tells her to wait here for a moment, that Vazark escaped toward the canyon, that he's going to take care of Vazark and will be back quickly. And Ronaldo rushes off at full speed to find that lich. At the same time, Edna senses danger. So she activates her earpiece and says, Kanho, can you hear me? Hello, Kanho. It's Edna, can you hear me? Then the scene changes to inside the canyon, where several explosions happen in that place, as the battle there seems to be very intense and apparently it was not a battle. It was a massacre, because Vazark got the worst of it, and the apron he was taking such good care of was also damaged. And there he is, all broken and with only half a head left. And Ronaldo, who was powered up with the strength of a god, comes flying in near him, looking very imposing. But Ronaldo is really exhausted, because the power he borrowed from Tyrion is taking a huge toll on him, and now it's starting to become unstable. So Ronaldo realizes he's close to his limit and that he has to finish this now. But suddenly he hears, Ronaldo. Oh, Ronaldo, are you okay? Oh, Ronaldo. Then he looks back and realizes it's someone he knows calling out to him. He says, Kanho, is that you? Kanho says yes and asks why he came alone. So, the hero of the Eliono continent lands on the ground and goes to talk to Kanho. And he apologizes for leaving without saying anything, because Vazark took a hostage, so he didn't even have time to let anyone know. Then Kanho is startled and says, what? Vazark? He took a hostage? Ronaldo, staggering, tells Kanho that everything is fine now. But as he says this, the power of the god Tyrion starts to fade from his body. But Ronaldo says that he was only able to defeat Vazark because he received the blessing of the god Tyrion. And so, Kanho, noticing that he's dizzy, asks him, but are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? Ronaldo thinks to himself that Tyrion's blessing is completely gone, since he can no longer hear the voice of his god, and that finally, the power Tyrion gave him has faded away. But Ronaldo believes that the power ran out at just the right moment, because now that Kanho is here, they can finally put an end to this Demon King. And so he says to Kanho, can I ask you a question? And as Ronaldo turns to finish off Vazark, he asks the question, by any chance, did you find that young woman Vazark kidnapped? I left her hidden nearby. Then, the weary hero of Tyrion warns Kanho to be very careful. And before Ronaldo could finish what he was saying, he gets stabbed with a demonic blade. And I bet he really felt that one, Because Kanho didn't just stab Ronaldo with that blade, he drove it all the way through the hero's chest. He did it with a big grin on his face, because hero Ronaldo let his guard down and just took a fatal back attack. And Ronaldo can't even say anything else, he just keeps groaning, because the shock and surprise hit him all at once. But the badass starts smiling and calls Ronaldo a bastard. And then Kanho says to him, hey, go play hero in some other webtoon, okay? Because in this one, I'm the main character. It's not good for my story for you to stick around, since everyone thought you were dead and now you're back trying to be the hero of my story, so go bother someone else. Then the scene shifts to the Guardians Arena, where Kanho and Kim Mai are having a friendly duel, and the badass, holding the great sword ram with the feather in one hand, easily parries Kim Mai's attack. But the hero of the land, Kim Mai, isn't about to give up. So, with a gleam in his eyes, Kim Mai starts to raise his aura. And then, the hero of the land charges forward with his sword technique, Rising Dragon, trying to strike Kanho. But Kanho, holding Graham, just stands there waiting for his pet Kim Mai's attack. And like a dragon, Kim Mai lunges at Kanho with all his might, because in this duel he intends to give it his all, but the dragon technique changes form and becomes Descending Dragon. And so, Kim Mai unleashes that attack on Kanho with all his strength. However, in the midst of all that dust, two red flashes are seen. So Kim Mai quickly backs away, sensing danger. Then 6 arrows of power shoot out from the middle of that glow, and Kim Mai, showing his reflexes, manages to block one of those attacks. Kangwoo keeps thinking that he only proposed this duel to separate Kim Mai from Ronaldo, since his plan is to get Ronaldo alone. And so, as Kangwoo looks at Kim Mai, he realizes just how strong he has become, because the swordsmanship and power he's showing now are definitely superior to Cheon Mujing. And Kangwoo is sure of one thing: if Kim Mai keeps growing like this, he'll definitely be able to take on even the 7 princes of hell. But then, Kangwoo also starts to raise his aura, because he intends to push Kim Mai to his limits. So Kangwoo uses another one of his hacks to boost the attack power of his weapon. But while Kangwoo is all fired up, he hears a call. Kangwoo, Kangwoo, can you hear me? It's little Edna. Kangwoo, are you listening to me? Then we realize that this was the call Edna made to him. So, Kangwoo mentally responds to her, "Hey, Edna, I can hear you. What happened?" Edna explains everything to him and asks Kangwoo what she should do now. Kim Mai is confused, because Kangwoo suddenly just froze. Then Edna goes on explaining to Kangwoo everything that's happening with Valzark, and she says she's afraid Valzark might die, since out of nowhere Ronaldo became super powerful. So Kangwoo says to her, "What? Valzark is losing to him? And now he's running away and being chased? Alright, Edna, stay there, okay? I'm on my way over." Then Kangwoo, using his surveillance power, watches everything happening in that canyon through Valzark's eyes, and he notices Ronaldo, ready to cast a spell. When that sword hits the ground, Kangwoo finds the situation really strange, because after Valzark made a contract with him, he's at least 10 times stronger, and for him to be getting pushed like this, Ronaldo's power must have increased a lot. So, Kangwoo gets worried about losing his pet, because at this rate, he could definitely die. And while Ronaldo is in that position, a golden light mixed with an explosion starts to emanate from him and rushes toward all the enemies surrounding him. With that, all those skeleton soldiers are wiped out instantly. Immediately after, Ronaldo charges at Valzark in a furious way, and Kangwoo, who was watching all of this, realizes that something is definitely off and things are about to go bad. So, Kangwoo starts wondering, what did Ronaldo do to get so strong? And why does he have that halo over his head? So Kangwoo decides to speak to Valzark telepathically and asks, "Valzark, what's going on? Why did Ronaldo get so strong?" Valzark says he doesn't know, but suddenly a light appeared and from that moment on, Ronaldo became this strong. So Kangwoo, really puzzled, starts thinking, did he awaken? That's so strange. Kangwoo asks Edna Zeno what's going on and if she knows why Ronaldo got so strong. Edna Zeno says she doesn't know, but suddenly a light surrounded Ronaldo's whole body and he became this strong. Kangwoo, still really confused, keeps thinking, did Ronaldo awaken? But Edna Zeno is still really anxious and says, "Kangwoo, what should I do? Should I help Valzark?" Kangwoo says no, tells her to stay put, that he'll be there really soon. Edna Zeno and Kangwoo are both worried about Valzark, because if things keep going like this, he's definitely going to die. And so, Kangwoo puts away his spear and Kim Mai asks him, "Kangwoo, what happened?" Kangwoo just smiles and thinks to himself that the bet he's about to make is really dangerous, but he has no other choice. So, Kangwoo tells Kim Mai that by now Ronaldo must have already received his revelation. So, let's stop our duel and listen to his revelation. And Kim Mai, who had almost forgotten, says, "Oh right, the revelation. It must be about time. Let's go." Gi and Grace agree too, and tell everyone to go together to where Ronaldo is. So Kim Mai, Kangwoo, Gi, and Grace head to the room of Eleanor's hero to find out what revelation the god Tyrion gave him. But one thing really caught Kim Mai's attention, because Ronaldo isn't there. So he asks Kangwoo, where's Ronaldo? Anyway, did he go to the bathroom or something? Kangwoo says he doesn't know, but that there's something lying on the floor over there. So the two of them get closer to see what fell on the floor. And then Kim Mai says, "This is a footprint. That means he left here in such a hurry that he even left a mark on the floor." And Kangwoo says that something's not right, because there's no reason for Ronaldo to leave here in such a rush. And Kim Mai, still confused, says, Kangwoo, do you think that's why there's this footprint here? Kangwoo starts to get flustered and says that for sure either Valzark or the Demon Clan must have managed to lure Ronaldo away. Kangwoo tells Kim Mai that those two maniacs are definitely going to have time. And with that, Kangwoo takes off running toward a portal. And when he does that, Gi and Kim Mai are both startled. Then, Gi asks Kangwoo, what happened? Why are you running out like that? And Kangwoo, looking back, says there's no time to explain, that he'll go ahead and asks Kim Mai and Gi to follow him as soon as possible. And so, we return to the scene where Kangwoo is quite relieved to have arrived in time, because he almost lost Valzark. At that moment, he very gently pulls his blade out of Ronaldo's back. Then, Kangwoo says to Ronaldo, "Hey, dressed like that, anyone reading this webtoon would think you're the main character. So, do me a favor and die already, you bastard, and get out of my story." Edna Zena arrives, very happy, and says, "Kangwoo, I'm so glad you made it." Ronaldo looks back and realizes that Sweet Girl is innocently approaching this dangerous guy, so he turns and says, "Hey, girl, don't get close to that person, he's very dangerous." And Inazuna says, "Huh? What? Kangwoo isn't a dangerous person, he's way better than you, okay? Hey, Kangwoo, look, you remember, right? A long time ago, that guy tried to kill me, and I haven't forgotten. Teach him a lesson, okay?" Kangwoo tells Inazuna to hide, because Kimmy and Gaia will be arriving soon. So, sweet Inazuna leaves right away. Ronaldo, mortally wounded, keeps wondering if all of this is just a nightmare, because it feels like I'm seeing things. Then, Kangwoo says, "Walsark, are you okay? How are your injuries?" Walsark starts to smile and says, "He. The injuries I suffered weren't superficial. But I can still move." And he says this while running his hand over his apron, which was completely destroyed. While hearing all of this, Ronaldo is startled, because how could the Demon King Walsark be talking to Kangwoo like that? Then, Kangwoo says to Walsark, "Hey, Walsark, stop pretending to be tough, okay? I know you're hurt, so I want you to leave together with little Edna." And then, Walsark says, "Yes, master, I'm leaving. I'll do as you ordered." And only now does Ronaldo realize that they're all together. While Ronaldo watches little Edna and Walsark leaving that place, he starts thinking that there could only be one being capable of using the Demon King Walsark like a mere subordinate. So, Ronaldo turns to Kangwoo and says, "You're Satan, aren't you?" And Kangwoo replies to him, What nonsense are you talking about, man? Of course I'm not." Then, Kangwoo finally decides to take off his mask and says, "Hey, you're confusing me with that evil demon. Satan is really unpleasant, and he's the one trying to bring this land to ruin, not me." So, after taking off his mask, Kangwoo says that he is not Satan. But at that moment, Ronaldo finally sees Kangwoo's true face and says, "What? Is that you? You're that master of the demon dragon, aren't you?" Because Ronaldo remembers very well the dragon they were almost killing, and then a really strong guy showed up to defend that dragon. Then, Kangwoo, smiling broadly, says to him, "Yeah, and you're going to die for being too slow to figure things out." And the best part is the look of happiness on his face, because his plans worked out. Ronaldo, gathering all his strength, charges at Kangwoo, calling him a demon and saying that he's been toying with him this whole time. "Then, I'm going to finish you off." So, Ronaldo speaks very harshly and starts spitting out a lot of red liquid, because he's only still alive thanks to his hero trait, which lets him stay alive for a little while even after taking a fatal blow. So, Ronaldo, agonizing and on the verge of death, can't even move from his spot. But Kangwoo isn't going to let him die without giving him a good dose of bullying first, and so he says, "Hey, Ronaldinho, don't bother trying, okay? You've got a really big hole in your body. If I were you, I'd just stay put and wait for death. So just stay right there. Look, I'll show you that I'm your friend. I'll help you out." Ronaldo starts calling out to Tyrion, but the god Tyrion doesn't hear him. Kangwoo tells Ronaldo that Tyrion won't hear him, and that he's being punished for being stupid. And so, Kangwoo says he feels guilty, because they never even got to know each other. And whenever Ronaldo saw him, he thought he was an enemy. And since Ronaldo was trying to kill one of his subordinates, this situation became inevitable. And Ronaldo, without any strength left, can't even say a word. He just stands there, listening to all that bullying. Then Kangwoo says to him, "Hey, Ronaldo, put yourself in my shoes. I couldn't do anything else but this, because your actions led to this situation. So just die quietly, alright?" But Ronaldo, gathering all his strength, says to him, "You're a son of a fruit. Your mom works at a brothel. Your dad went out to buy cigarettes and never came back. And your grandma." And as he says this, Kangwoo starts injecting his dark mana into Ronaldo's body to finish off his enemy once and for all. And so, Kangwoo apologizes to Ronaldo and speeds up his death even more. And then, Ronaldo falls lifeless, while Kangwoo promises that he will remember him, because Ronaldo only died because he was impulsive, he acted without thinking. Then, Kimmy, Gaia, and Grace come running to the spot, shouting Kangwoo's name. Kimmy asks if Kangwoo found Ronaldo, but Kangwoo starts screaming as if he's in despair. They stand there listening to Kangwoo, screaming in desperation and cursing the world. Then, Gaia asks Grace, what's going on?" But Kangwoo screams even louder and says, "Oh, God Tyrion. Oh, Goddess Gaia, if you can hear me, answer me. Why did you let Ronaldo's life end like this? Bring him back to life. He was such a great warrior." And Kangwoo, the master of dramatic arts, stands there mourning the death of Ronaldo, the hero of the continent Eleanor. Gaia and Grace are really sad, because they don't know how things ended up like this. The hero of the land, Kimmy, is completely devastated, since yet another of his companions has just lost his life. Kangwoo, looking at Kimmy, apologizes, saying that if he hadn't suggested the duel. Then Gaia interrupts him and says, "Kangwoo, it's not your responsibility." And Kimmy, also feeling Kangwoo's pain, is very sad, because his older brother has suffered a huge loss. But Kangwoo is the picture of happiness and thinks to himself, "It's really not my responsibility." Huh. Good riddance, that bastard. Kangwoo knows that everyone will think it's Satan's fault, since Satan used that nasty trick to lure Ronaldo here and killed him. Kangwoo is sure that no one will suspect him. So, Kangwoo, finishing his act and shedding fake tears, says that the light is fading because a great warrior has just fallen on the battlefield. Gaia is pure sadness. She says they've lost a great hero. Kangwoo, putting on a big show and crying a lot, says yes. However, the leader of the Guardians, Gaia, comes very close to Kangwoo and tries to encourage him, saying that they're not done yet, that they still have a war to win. And so, placing her hand on Kangwoo's shoulders, she tells him to look up at the sky. Gaia tells Kangwoo that she can't see it, but even though the light is fading, there are many stars in the sky, and they will light up this darkness. And like a star, you and all the Guardians will shine on this land and defeat all evil, because as long as there are heroes trying to protect this world, the light will never go out and will never disappear. And Gaia, even without being able to see, says that the light is still not going out. And Kangwoo, after hearing all that speech, thinks to himself, if this were a song, it would be a killer song. So, the king of drama, Kangwoo, keeps up his act and even sheds a fake tear. And so he says, yes, Miss Gaia, for sure, the light hasn't gone out yet, we're still here. Then, looking back with his eyes still full of tears, Kangwoo tells Gaia that as long as they're here, they won't let the light disappear. And Gaia, realizing that she cheered Kangwoo up, says yes, and that she really believes in Kangwoo. Kimmy doesn't even know what to say, and is mourning everything that happened. But Kangwoo is actually pretty happy, because the only person who could reveal his identity just died, and the Guardian's trust in him is at its peak. And while Kangwoo is thinking all of this, with his eyes closed he says to Gaia, Miss, we need to hold a funeral for Ronaldo. But Kangwoo doesn't notice when Ronaldo's sword starts floating in the air with a golden blow. Then, the sword starts to speak, hey, what's going on? Kangwoo's eyes go wide, and as for Gaia, there is no point in her widening her eyes, since she's already blind. From the sword, the image of the great god hero Tyrion appears, and he says, who was the bastard that killed my son? Tyrion raises his fury to the max and asks again, who dared to kill my son? And so, the system introduces us to the fact that this is the god hero Tyrion, and he is extremely angry. Then, the god hero Tyrion, looking at Kangwoo, asks again, hey, don't just stand there in silence. I asked you a question. Who was it that killed my son? And Kangwoo, still standing there in shock, doesn't even know what to say, since there's a god right in front of him. So he started thinking, what? Something's not right here. And Kangwoo remembers that he had checked and seen that the connection between Ronaldo and Tyrion had ended. And after that, Kangwoo also makes sure that none of the gods were listening, because when he made that scene, shouting for the god Tyrion and for Gaia, it was to make sure that no god was hearing any of it. So, Kangwoo wonders what he did wrong to provoke this god to show up like this, since he wasn't supposed to know about what happened. And so, Kangwoo is still confused and wonders how he figured that out. But Gaia says, Tyrion, please, calm down. And the god Tyrion says to Gaia, do you know who killed my son? And when he says that, Kangwoo's eyes go wide and he starts thinking, huh? Wait a minute, doesn't he know he killed Ronaldo? Tyrion, very angry, is looking all around, trying to find the killer. And Kangwoo, upon seeing this, realizes that because the connection was broken, he doesn't know what happened. He only knows that his son died. So, Kangwoo feels a bit relieved, because he just avoided the worst case scenario. And so, Kangwoo, still crouched near Ronaldo's body, starts coming up with a plan and says, it was Balzark, he was the one who killed Ronaldo. But the god Tyrion says no, it wasn't him, that's impossible. If it had been him, he would know. So Kangwoo says, well, if it wasn't Balzark, then there's only one person who could have killed Ronaldo. So, it must have been Satan, because that demon is very strong and cunning. Then, Kangwoo plays his trump card, because whenever something goes wrong, he pins it on Satan. And just like that, he shifts the god's attention to Satan as well. And the god Tyrion, looking around, says he doesn't see anyone. Satan definitely isn't around there. So, he asks Kangwoo, hey, was it that evil demon who took my son's life? But before Kangwoo can answer, the god Tyrion starts spinning around, muttering, Satan, oh, if I catch Satan, I'll finish him, damn Satan. Then, in a loud voice, he says, damn you, Satan, I'm going to kill you. And so, the system announces that Tyrion's fury is directed at Satan, and this god shows his pure hatred toward his son's killer. And once again, Kangwoo blames Satan, because even without being there, that demon has gotten Kangwoo out of a lot of trouble. And so, breathing a sigh of relief, Kangwoo once again puts the blame on Satan. Then, god Tyrion speaks to him, child of Gaia, I need to talk to you. Then, a god, full of fury, looking at Kangwoo, says, is it true that you are also fighting against these evil demons? And Kangwoo, very serious, says that it's true, that the purpose of his life is to completely defeat Satan. Then, Tyrion lets his guard down and asks Kangwoo, can I trust you? And before Kangwoo can answer, Gaia's incarnation says yes, that among everyone there, Kangwoo is the most righteous of all and the most fit to be a hero among them. And what's more, out of all of us here, Kangwoo was the first to arrive and is also the one suffering the most from Ronaldo's death. Then, the sword of the god Tyrion starts to approach Kangwoo, and that jerk of a god says to Kangwoo, dear child who has suffered the loss of my own son, what is your name? And Kangwoo says his name is Woo Kangwoo. Tell Kangwoo to take Ronaldo's sword. And Kangwoo, the tough guy, after hearing this, is left confused about why the god Tyrion said that to him. So, that god explains. He says that the name of this sword is the Law of God, and this is a divine sword that contains his power. And so, God Tyrion, wanting to put an end to Satan, tells Kangwoo that he is giving him his sword. And this sword contains all of his power. Then, the sword that holds the power of a god starts sparking with lightning and moves closer to Kangwoo. And Tyrion says that he will transfer his power to Kangwoo, even if it costs him his life. So, the sword, with the power of a god, gets even closer to Kangwoo. And immediately after that, the system issues a danger warning, because this is not allowed. And so, the Earth's defense system, Gaia, detected that the hero god Tyrion is interfering with its system, and this action is not allowed. Then, several warning windows pop up for Tyrion, telling him not to do this, not to transfer his power, because this is completely forbidden by the Earth's defense system. So, the system gives a final warning to God Tyrion and says that the action he is taking is not a possible action. But God Tyrion doesn't care at all, he just lost his son and is very angry, and he manages to transfer his power to Kangwoo. So, just like the Gaia dimensional system did to Kangwoo when he tried to cross dimensions, it does the same to God Tyrion and unleashes a divine shock on him with the intention of killing that god. And Kangwoo, seeing this, shouts out God Tyrion's name. Kangwoo, standing in front of that sword, doesn't really know what's going on, but there's one thing he's sure of, not even a god can interfere with this system however they want. Then, Kangwoo's eyes start to shine, because he just had a really sinister idea, and most importantly, God Tyrion is giving him his powers. And more than that, he's doing it while risking his own life, because if he keeps getting hit by the divine lightning, he's definitely going to die. So Kangwoo, the kind-hearted person he is, speaks to Tyrion, God Tyrion, we can't afford to lose a hero god like you. Don't do this. Meanwhile, Earth's defense system, Gaia, is frying God Tyrion. But Kangwoo knows how to push someone's buttons. So he says, what do you mean? A great god sacrificing himself for mortals? You shouldn't do that. And Tyrion, after hearing this, already coughing up divine blood, becomes even more determined and says, no, I'm going to keep going, I'm a determined god, even if it costs me my life, I will pass my powers on to you. And Kangwoo, after hearing this, starts smiling to himself, because this foolish god is just too easy to manipulate. From the short time he's talked with God Tyrion, Kangwoo already knows that he's a stubborn god, and after hearing that, it just makes him even more determined to go through with it. God Tyrion, pouring all his power into the sword, tells Kangwoo that he won't back down. And for Kangwoo, being the first person to suffer because of his son, he is worthy of receiving this power. And then, God Tyrion, very close to death, tells Kangwoo to take this power before he dies. And Kangwoo, very sad and with his head down, tells God Tyrion that since this is his wish, he will do it. And so, Kangwoo's hand reaches out to take the sword that holds the power of God Tyrion. Then, as Kangwoo grabs God Tyrion's sword, he begins to receive the power of that god. And holding it with both hands, Kangwoo makes a vow, saying that in the name of Gaia, he will make sure that Ronaldo's death was not in vain. Then, wings of power begin to appear on Kangwoo's back. And so, Kangwoo, very falsely, but this time telling the truth, promises that he will save the world, that he will kill Satan, and that he will also eliminate his servant, Balzark. And so, the system informs Kangwoo that he has received the blessing of the hero god. And also, the system gives some sad news, the hero King Tyrion ended up dying because of his excessive interference with the system. Then, Kangwoo shouts Tyrion's name, and Tyrion, seeing this, makes a mental request to Kangwoo to use his powers with justice. The god Tyrion, dying peacefully, starts to feel that his connection with Kangwoo has finally begun, because from the moment Kangwoo picked up the sword, Tyrion can feel everything Kangwoo is feeling. Then, he realizes that Kangwoo is very hardworking and determined, and also has a great amount of demonic energy. Whoa, hold on. What? He has demonic energy. And just like that, the god Tyrion's eyes go wide, and the soul of god Tyrion goes to a place we're all very familiar with. And so, god Tyrion keeps asking himself, what? Could this be the demonic sea? Then, he looks up and speaks to Kangwoo. But Kangwoo looks absolutely delighted. He's there, smiling at him, because Tyrion is now inside his demonic sea. And god Tyrion asks him, are you the master of this demonic sea? And Kangwoo, still smiling at him, says yes. He says that both Ronaldo and Tyrion are a couple of fools who only realized it when it was already too late. Then, god Tyrion starts cursing out Kangwoo's mother and calls him a bastard, asking if he was the one who killed his child. Then, god Tyrion starts to panic, because he gave his power to a demon. But Kangwoo, who is kindness itself, says to him, no one asked you to choose me. You did it all on your own and fell for it. And so, the authority of gluttony begins to devour Tyrion's soul. Then, Kangwoo tells that god not to be too sad, because he's going to keep his promise, he's going to kill Satan. And Tyrion, still being swallowed by the authority of predation, hesitates and asks Kangwoo, if you're not Satan, then who are you? Then, before disappearing, the god Tyrion says he needs to tell all of this to Michael. But Kangwoo, knowing that the soul of that god is inside his sea of knowledge and that he's already dead, says that he won't be able to tell anyone anything. Then, Kangwoo tells the god Tyrion to hand over the rest of his power and die quietly. But Tyrion gathers all the strength he still has in his soul and shows that he is not human, he is a god, and says, since you want my power, I'll give you everything I have, but I won't give it to you the easy way. And so, that sword which before had a gentle energy now starts to tremble with very strong divine lightning. Then, Kangwoo feels that blow, because the soul of the god Tyrion still has a lot of power, and Kangwoo lets out a very loud scream, because he is in a lot of pain. And the three behind him get really worried and call out to Kangwoo. But Kangwoo is in so much pain that he can't even speak. He realizes that Tyrion, on purpose, amplified all of his energy so that Kangwoo can no longer absorb his energy. And so, Kangwoo realizes that this is Tyrion's final act before he disappears. Kangwoo realizes that the energy Tyrion is transferring to him is a sacred energy, and it's very different from the demonic energy he's had up until now. And Kangwoo is certain that he can't control this energy. So, the demonic energy around Kangwoo starts to grow, because the only way to counter this final attack from God Tyrion is like this. Gathering all his strength, Kangwoo says he won't let this power slip away like that. So, he amplifies the authority of gluttony even further. And that ability which is devouring God Tyrion inside Kangwoo's demonic sea also manifests outwardly to absorb all the energy that's in the sword. Then, after that, the system notifies Kangwoo that the mana lover skill is active. The system also warns that this energy is very different from his own, and they can't be mixed. The system also reports that this energy can't be converted into demonic energy. And so, the system asks, are you really sure you want to keep going like this? But Kangwoo, who's in a lot of pain and knows it can't get any worse than this, doesn't even care and orders his ability to devour all of Tyrion's holy energy. Then, the predation ability shows its true power and starts forcibly devouring all of Tyrion's holy power. Next, the system informs Kangwoo that the energy of the hero god Tyrion is being forcibly converted into demonic energy. However, it's a huge amount of energy, and whatever can't be converted will be expelled from Kangwoo's body. So, Kangwoo thought things couldn't get any worse, but they actually did. It feels like he's breathing fire and sulfur and being fried in boiling oil. Grace gets really worried and tries to go toward Kangwoo to help him, but Kim Mai, being really silly, says, "Oh, Grace, don't get close to him, okay?" And Grace, looking back, asks why. Kim Mai, the wise donkey, says that Kangwoo is transforming and this is a stage for him to become stronger. It seems like he's being reborn. And that black blood he's coughing up is just a symptom that his body is getting rid of toxins. And if you get close to Kangwoo to help him, you'll definitely suffer irreversible damage. But Kim Mai knows this because he read it in the cultivation manual. Kangwoo, spitting out black blood, keeps thinking that his blood has always been black and that the pain he's feeling now is something he's never felt in his life. And so, he mentally begs them to cast healing spells on him, because this hurts way too much. And Gaia, noticing all that suffering, says to Kim Mai, "Hey, Kim Mai, shouldn't we help him? Isn't there anything we can do? Or even cast a healing spell?" Kim Mai says no, that these wounds appearing on Kangwoo's body are part of the process of reconstructing his body, so healing spells are completely unnecessary. And Kangwoo, upon hearing this, gets desperate from so much pain, because his pet is totally wrong, and so Kangwoo mentally curses Kim Mai, calling him a bastard, since Kangwoo still can't even speak. Then Kangwoo's eyes start to get heavy and he begins to close them. Meanwhile, Kim Mai says to the two of them, "Well, there's nothing we can do. We can only stay here watching and hope that everything turns out okay." Gaia and Grace fall into that gloom and just stand there, watching Kangwoo suffer, but Kangwoo is there mentally begging, asking for a healing spell. But since no one does anything, he mentally curses Kim Mai again, and his eyes get even heavier until he completely closes them. Right after that, the system notifies that Kangwoo's demonic energy has increased by 4 more, and the deepest paths of the demonic sea have finally been unlocked. However, Kangwoo must fulfill all the conditions of the demonic spirit in order to activate this. And finally, the system also tells Kangwoo that he has reached the maximum stat level. So from now on, his stats can't be increased anymore. That will only happen after he fulfills the first condition to obtain a demonic spirit or when he levels up. Then the scene shifts to a few days later, right there in the Grand Canyon, and a green-colored dimensional crack starts to appear at that spot. We know, right? That dimensional crack has always been connected to the continent of Eleonoro, and from that crack, claws with very sharp talons emerge. Then 3 beings that look like humanoid eagles come out of that portal. 1 red, 1 white, and 1 green. Then, the red eagle, looking ahead, says that this place can only be Earth. And that eagle also said that this place looks just like Lucifer described, a sky full of stars, really beautiful, and a lush landscape. And those 3 eagles, inside the Grand Canyon, stand there taking in all that wonder. However, the red eagle runs its hand over the ground and says it can feel the energy of the god Tyrion. And, for sure, this is the place where he died. So, did I say white eagle? Yellow eagle. So, the yellow eagle says he doesn't care about a low-class god like Tyrion. But the green eagle says Tyrion isn't the problem. What's important is knowing that someone was strong enough to kill a god. And it's this person they've come to find. Then, the red eagle, with its very sharp claws, tells the other eagles that it heard there are many children of Gaia in this world. They must know something. Then, the yellow eagle asks if they can kill the children of Gaia. And the red eagle says that for sure the god on the other side won't care if we do that. And the god on the other side is Eleonora's god. Then, the green eagle, seeming a bit scared, reminds the red eagle that Gaia is a high-ranking god. But the red eagle asks the green eagle why she's afraid. After all, Gaia is kind of a dead god. She pretty much won't be able to do anything, since she's very weak. Then, spreading their wings like birds, those eagles get ready to fly. So, leaving the Grand Canyon at high speed, they head out to complete their mission. But the yellow eagle won't stop talking and says, well, anyway, it's really impressive that someone managed to kill Tyrion. And the red eagle says to the other eagle, of course it's important. If the god hadn't died, we wouldn't be here. Then, that eagle remembers Satan, that he must be in this world. So, the red eagle thinks that Satan will be a great help for Lucifer's plans. Then the scene shifts to 1 week after Ronaldo's death at the hands of the evil Satan. And because of that, all the Guardians became sad and even stopped doing their duties. And if you don't know, the main duties of the Guardians are to investigate the demonic order, kill the monsters that come out of the dungeons, and save all the lives in the world. So, Kangwoo, in the Guardians' Hall, talks to the person, okay, so you want me to go to South America? Is that it? Then, Kangwoo surprises the narrator. He says, hasn't that place already been overrun by monsters? Are there still people alive there? Gaia, looking very sad, says yes. All the people who subscribe to Uncle's channel are still alive, but the South American country that's asking for help is Venezuela. And she says that many villagers who lived in isolated villages had survived the great massacre in the cities. However, the monsters spread throughout the entire country. So, even those who were hiding deep in the forest were found by the monsters. And Gaia tells Kangwoo that these are the people she wants him to save. And Gaia says that she had already asked the Americans for help. However, since they have little manpower and these villages are pretty remote, it's going to take them a while to get there. So, she says, Kangwoo, that's why I want you and Kim Mai to go to Venezuela to save these people, because by the time the American forces get there, all those isolated communities will pretty much be wiped out. So, that's your mission, go there and protect those people. Kangwoo isn't happy about this mission at all, but since he's part of the Guardians, he doesn't have a choice. And besides, since the demonic order isn't making any moves, Kangwoo has no choice but to take on this mission. Then he remembers his master Kuka, that old man who prepared hundreds of demons for Kangwoo to feed on their demonic energy. That's what's bothering Kangwoo, because if he had known that the demons wouldn't show up anymore, he wouldn't have killed that master Kuka. But now, the old man is already pushing up daisies, and Kangwoo knows that such a sudden change in monster attacks might be the work of the demonic order. So, it's worth investigating this. And so he says, Lady Gaia, I'll take on this mission, okay? Leave it to me. And she's very happy and tells Kangwoo that he won't be able to be teleported there, since this is an official mission. So, he'll have to go by plane. Kangwoo, see if you can cheer up Kimmy, because he's been really sad lately. So please, go talk to him and see what's going on. And Kangwoo is surprised, because he thought Kimmy had already recovered. Then the scene shifts to the training room, where there's a lot of smoke and explosions. Then the system announces that the second stage of training is starting, and Kimmy, still sweaty from the first stage, gets ready to face the second stage. So, as the monsters from the second stage start to appear for the fight, Kimmy stands there in his attack stance. Then, some time later, the third stage begins and even stronger, much fiercer monsters appear right in front of Kimmy. These monsters aren't there for fun, and right after being summoned, they charge at Kimmy with intense ferocity. But the hero of Earth doesn't just stand there, he charges at those monsters too. Then, at lightning speed and with a precise strike, Kimmy slices the first monster, and right after that, the second one is practically cut in half, because he's fired up and has a fierce look in his eyes, something is really worrying him. Kimmy feels very uncomfortable with himself. He keeps thinking about this while he's slicing up several of those monsters that were just summoned. He remembers his mother apologizing to him, saying she brought him into this world and can't protect him. While Kimmy was going hungry, his father's other family was living comfortably. Kimmy knows that his mother doesn't remember any of this anymore. However, those memories from the past still cut deep in his heart. So Kimmy fights even more fiercely against those monsters, because getting out of that situation he was in wasn't his own doing, he was saved over and over again by Kanghan. That's why Kimmy trains even harder to become like Kanghan, since his savior is someone who inspires him to grow stronger and stronger. However, the more Kimmy trains, the more it seems like the distance between him and Kanghan grows. Kimmy, as the hero of Earth, has a mission to save everyone who is in pain, because he knows what suffering is. His past was truly dark. So Kimmy, the hero of Earth, lowering his sword, knows he needs to become stronger so he won't have to rely on anyone. So, as he looks at all the monsters all around him, Kimmy says he has a goal, to become like Kanghan, who is a true hero. Kimmy remembers Ronaldo's death, and the feeling he had wasn't that of a hero, because after seeing Ronaldo murdered by the terrible Satan, the emotion Kimmy felt when he saw Ronaldo's corpse wasn't sadness, but relief.
You know why, right? Because he was trying to get with Kimmy's girl. Then it was too late.
That was Kimmy's thought, die, you bastard. And as a hero, he's there torturing himself over it. Because how, as a hero, could he be so happy about the death of that crazy, cursed guy? And so Kimmy, the hero of Earth, realizes he was full of jealousy. So Kimmy, still unable to forgive himself, because after Ronaldo's death, he's feeling way too comfortable, and that's eating him up inside. Because Kimmy, the hero of Earth, thinks of himself as a really selfish person who's only thinking about himself and not about that damned hero who died. But deep down, in the very core of his being, Kimmy is thrilled about the death of his rival, because Gaia is love at first sight and has won Kimmy's heart. And so, after slicing up all those monsters, the system notifies him that the training is over. Then someone says, "Hey Kimmy, you there?" And Kimmy, who was lost in his thoughts while training, didn't even notice that there was someone else there now. Kanghan says he's there to talk to him about something very important. But first, Kanghan invites him to go somewhere more comfortable. Because what I want to talk to you about, Kimmy, is something personal. Then the scene shifts to the rooftop of the building where Kanghan lives. Then the conversation between the two adults begins. So, Kanghan asks, "Hey Kimmy, are you being so strict with your training just to overcome something that held you back in the past? Or do you not recognize yourself when you feel relief at your rival's death? Because I know you like Gaia, and since Ronaldo came on to her, I think what you're feeling is normal, since having your rival out of the way is exactly what you needed." What he doesn't know is that it was Kanghan who gave him that help. Then Kimmy tells Kanghan that he's right in his questions, because what he's feeling now isn't the feeling of a hero. Because I was happy about that bastard's death. Then Kimmy tells Kanghan that all he wants now is to become a savior, just like you, Kanghan. Then Kimmy tells Kanghan that, the way he's feeling selfish and blaming himself for having these feelings, I'll never become like you, Kanghan. And Kanghan starts thinking, what? Does Kimmy think I'm a good guy? Because if it were up to me, I wouldn't just be sad about him, no way. I'd be dancing the Macarena on top of that bastard Ronaldo's body. So let's sing. Move your body, what a joy, Macarena. Aren't you going to sing? Okay, I'll stop singing. Kanghan is thinking that if someone had hit on Alice, he'd be dancing like a super happy kid on that person's corpse. Kanghan knows Kimmy is a silly kid, because he keeps thinking, me, a savior? No way, I'm not. I'm just going to protect this world from everyone who wants to destroy it, and I'll never let hell take over this land. Kanghan is sure that Kimmy still has a lot of growing up to do, because he still doesn't know how the world works. Because if someone tries to take your woman and that person dies, everyone in England would be really happy. So Kanghan knows he needs to help Kimmy get over this trauma in order to turn him into someone useful to him. So, Kanghan, knowing that he doesn't see himself as a savior and can't really understand that kind of thinking about him, approaches Kimmy and puts his hand on Kimmy's head, and Kanghan realizes that spending time with Earth's hero is making his heart a little softer. Just a little. Kanghan helped his pet without him knowing, and did it all out of friendship. But Kanghan, the king of the underworld, knows that he's not supposed to have these kinds of feelings. So Kanghan puts aside all his thoughts of compensation and calculations based on profit, because Kimmy's pure heart also makes him feel a little purer. Then, Kanghan, whose heart was pure for just a second, grabs Kimmy's hair and starts messing it up. And then Kimmy says, "Hey Kanghan, what are you doing? Why are you messing up my hair?" Kanghan turns around and leaves, saying, "Hey Kimmy, let's go." But inside, he keeps thinking that having a feeling of friendship for someone isn't such a bad thing, because in the underworld you couldn't trust anyone. And here on Earth, I still don't trust anyone. So Kimmy, with her hair all messed up, asks Kanghan, "Hey, where are we going?" And the tough guy, looking back, cracks a smile and says to Kimmy, "We're going to save people." And then the scene shifts to a village in the middle of the Amazon jungle, which is in Venezuela, South America. And the people in that village are very anxious, because they were attacked by several demons. And the scream, cry, and fear is etched in their eyes. Then a small child with a terrible burn on their stomach won't stop screaming. So, Pytos, holding the child in his arms, puts his hand over the wound and says, "Superior divine healing." And right after that, a golden light starts to come out of those hands, and immediately the child stops crying and looks at their stomach, because where it hurt, the pain stopped instantly. Then we see that the one healing the child is the sweet Alice. And she says, "Look, I've already treated all his injuries, okay? You can take him now." And those faces that were sad before are now filled with pure joy because the saviors have arrived in their village. Then Tai-Su says, "Sister-in-law, your healing ability is amazing. Every time I see it, I'm really surprised." So the child who was crying before is now laughing, and the child's mother, holding them in her arms, thanks Alice for performing that miracle. Alice, being very modest, says it's really nice to be able to help. Then everyone there starts smiling a lot. Suddenly, someone rushes into the place very quickly. Alice and Tai-Su look in that direction and say, "Kimmy just arrived." And Kimmy, feeling pretty awkward, arrives at the tent where they're staying, and Tai-Su says that the great hero of South America has just arrived. Kimmy gives an embarrassed laugh, because being called a hero like that makes him a little uncomfortable. Then he says, "Hey Tai-Su, you calling me a hero like that? I actually get embarrassed, you know." And Alice, sitting on the floor next to Tai-Su, tells Kimmy that he deserves that title because in the past few days he saved hundreds of people. Then she asks Kimmy, "So Kimmy, if you're not a hero, then who is?" Kimmy, still feeling awkward and shy, says he just did what had to be done, saving people and helping those who need help. Kimmy also says that, to him, the real heroes are the ones who are out there killing the monsters. And then we see Cheon Eugene and Chulin, because those two are in the forest around that village, killing every monster that comes near and completely clearing the area. And so, with Chulin looking at the map, she already knows which direction to go next to keep making that place safer. Then, once again, the scene changes, because Kimmy is talking about a fight that has just ended, where the redhead, Bianca, and Gomo are all delivering a finishing blow to that creature at the same time, clearing that forest of powerful S-class monsters. And so, Kimmy also tells Alice that there are other people who are more observant than he is, because they are flying around, gathering all the people who are scattered. And what's more, tirelessly, they are trying to find traces of the demonic cult here. And so, when the scene zooms out a bit more, we can see that it's Kangwoo, because now the scene is flipped. Instead of him riding on top of his dragon, it's his dragon that's riding on him. And these two are an unbeatable duo because Denizinya, with her dragon's gaze, can see for hundreds of kilometers. But Kangwoo isn't left behind because with his power of observation, he can see even farther than Denizinya. And so, they patrol that entire gigantic forest, covering more than 2,000 kilometers of woodland. So, Kimmy says that these people are the real heroes. And Tai-Su is very happy because he was also included among the heroes. And so, Kimmy tells Tai-Su that their mission there will end tomorrow because the American forces will finally arrive. Kimmy asks Tai-Su if he managed to get in touch with Kangwoo since Kangwoo is really far from there. But then, a scream is heard and someone is calling for the hero Kimmy. And Kimmy, looking back, says that he recognizes that voice because it sounds like the village chief. But then, the village chief shouted again, this time desperately, "Help." Then, a feeling of extreme danger is triggered in Kimmy's instincts. And there he is, the village chief running and a small ball of energy coming after him even faster. And so, zooming in a bit more, we can see that the chubby guy is giving it everything he's got as he runs, but that dark ball, radiating a really sinister energy, is getting even closer to the village chief. Then, after the village chief spots Kimmy, he says, "Hero Kimmy, please save me." And while that chubby guy is begging for his life to be saved by the hero, that ball of energy starts to suck him in. And then, from inside that ball of energy, it looks like something is watching. And the observer's focus locked completely onto Kimmy. So, the hero of Earth isn't just going to stand there, watching someone die in front of him again. So, as he runs to save that old man, 3 other energy spheres quickly appear above his head. And Kimmy, sensing an even greater danger, looks up quickly and thinks, "I'm screwed." And the explosion that follows is truly massive, because those energy balls all exploded at the same time. But the hero of Earth, Kimmy, didn't die from that attack. And looking around, he asks if everyone is okay. Then, he hears a voice coming from above, and the voice says, "Is that the human? See, look over there." And Kimmy widens his eyes and looks up. Then, very sharp claws appear in front of Kimmy, and that voice keeps talking. "Yeah, I think that's the human, because I can feel the energy of the gods in him." So, Kimmy, getting ready to draw his sword. I don't know why he hasn't drawn his sword yet, right? He asks who they are. And then we're shown those 3 eagles from the beginning of part 22. The red eagle, the green eagle, and the white eagle. Narrator, are you blind? Did you call the yellow eagle white again? It's yellow, okay. So, that's what I said. If I pause the video, you'll hear me saying yellow eagle. Write in the comments if I said yellow eagle or white eagle. Anyone who writes that I said white eagle is a cuckold. So Kimmy, looking at those eagles, realizes their true nature. They're not animals, they're demons. And with that, we'll stop here. If you enjoyed part 23, please give it a like, okay? Share it to the family WhatsApp group.
And so, we begin part 23, with a lot of smoke in the air after a huge explosion and a great deal of demonic energy spreading throughout that village. And that demonic explosion was extremely powerful because those who didn't die instantly, some lost their sight, and others, due to the intense demonic energy in that place, started to feel sick and experience a lot of pain. While people are screaming to be saved, the hero of the land, Kimmy, finally decides to draw his sword since those creatures in front of him seem to be very strong. Hero Kimmy realizes that the energy emanating from them is the same as what he felt before, and as soon as he remembers that guy, Satan, because he also sensed that hateful energy coming from that demon. So Kimmy, realizing there are 3 demons in front of him, knows this fight won't be easy. Then that red eagle speaks to Kimmy, "Hey, you're related to Gaia, aren't you?" And Kimmy, who survived that first attack, doesn't even respond and stays focused. But Alice and Taisu arrive to help, asking if he's okay, but Kimmy tells them to fall back, since the enemies are extremely strong. Meanwhile, that demonic eagle starts casting another one of its spells. While doing this, that demon says they can finally find the incarnation of Gaia. All they have to do is capture that person down there. And so, with Kimmy as its main target, the red eagle says it doesn't need the rest and then hurls that sphere of demonic energy toward the other people. And that demon is such a coward because he throws that incredibly powerful spell right at our sweet Alice. And when our healer realizes it, it's already too late. But then, someone quickly runs in front of Alice. So Kimmy, with a powerful swing of her sword, deflects that deadly attack. Meanwhile, the tank Taisu and the healer Alice can't even open their eyes because the explosion that followed was really intense. Then, the hero of the land, Kimmy, looks back and tells them, "Taisu, I want you and Alice to take everyone and leave the village right now." And Taisu, not believing what he just heard, asks Kimmy, "Huh? What did you say?" Kimmy, looking straight ahead very seriously, tells Taisu that these creatures in front of them aren't monsters, but demons. Then Kimmy gives the order for everyone to run away and join the American forces, because he's going to do everything he can to buy as much time as possible. But Taisu is a tank, and seeing how strong those enemies are, he asks Kimmy, "Hey, can you handle this alone?" But before he can answer, Alice grabs the giant's hand and tells him they need to get out of there right now and evaluate the people, because she understands that Kimmy is prioritizing the lives of the civilians. So, Alice gathers all her courage and says, "Hey guys, let's get out of here, okay?" And Taisu, who is also full of courage, can't even break free from her hand and is dragged along by Alice, who, while running away from that place, calls out to all the civilians to escape with her. But then, the yellow eagle demon suddenly appears behind Taisu and Alice, saying that they're idiots for thinking they can escape from that place. But then, his eyes go wide, because he realizes there's an attack coming his way, and then someone says, "Hey, where do you think you're going?" Kimmy, moving quickly, gets between that high-ranking demon and the people who are fleeing. And then Kimmy, using his serious mode and showing that he's the hero, intends to face that impossible enemy. And so, he tells the yellow eagle not to get distracted by the others, because your opponent is me. The yellow eagle demon didn't like that one bit and immediately fires 5 of those demonic energy balls at Kimmy. And the tough hero from the land shows he's not that weak after all and starts skillfully cutting down all those spells shot in his direction. And then that eagle says to Kimmy, "Hey, Gaia's kin, how long do you think you can withstand my attacks?" "Well, I'm going to turn up the intensity a bit more." Then those demonic energy balls, moving at extremely high speed, much faster than a bullet, hit Kimmy's leg, hindering his movement. And then, another energy sphere, much faster, hits our hero's arm, causing him serious damage. Then, the yellow eagle starts to laugh at Kimmy and says to him, "Hey, is that all the power a kin of Gaia has? Are you really that weak and pathetic?" Then, that demon, noticing that Kimmy is already tired and sweating heavily, starts mocking him and asks, "Hey, where did your fighting spirit go? You were so serious just a moment ago." But Kimmy keeps thinking that he already knew this, that he doesn't have the strength to defeat such a powerful enemy. Kimmy knew from the start that he couldn't defeat any of those eagles, but even so, he decided to stay behind and sacrifice himself. The green eagle demon asks the red eagle what they should do about those who escaped. Then the red eagle demon says that the others who ran away aren't important, they just need to go after Gaia's relative. Then Kimmy remembers when they first arrived at that village. All the people were very grateful to them, because if it weren't for the presence of those heroes, they all would have been killed a long time ago. Kimmy thinks to himself that he never wanted to become a hero, he just did what was right. But all the people from that village, after being saved by Kimmy, started calling him their hero, to the point where all the children saw Kimmy as their true hero, wanting to grow up to be just like him. But Kimmy knows he's not a hero, and so he remembers his past, how hard everything you went through was, growing up as a child born out of wedlock, carrying many traumas and suffering as a cowardly loser. And then Kimmy goes back to those old thoughts, that he's not a hero, that he's simply someone very unhappy, who can't save anyone. But what about the demon that's there? He's not going to wait. So, laughing in Kimmy's face, he says that this situation is really interesting.
And Kimmy, realizing what's happening, already knows things are about to go bad. Then, the Yellow Eagle demon says to him, "Hey, you withstood several of my attacks, so let's see if you can handle this one too." And that's when we see that this very wicked demon created a gigantic sphere of demonic energy, 100 times more powerful than the previous ones. And so he gets ready to put an end to Kimmy. And Kimmy, seeing this, realizes there's no way out, because with his limited strength, there's no way he can escape from such powerful beings. And so Kimmy is certain that the thoughts he has about himself aren't absurd, that he really is just weak. But the Yellow Eagle demon isn't just going to stand there, and as he hurls the gigantic spell at Kimmy, he tells the hero of the land to fight as hard as he can and fight until the end, because today is the day of his death. Then the Green Eagle, hearing that, says, "Wait, weren't we not supposed to kill him? Did that lunatic go crazy? Because if he dies, how are we going to find Gaia?" Then the Red Eagle puts his hand on his face and says, he let himself get carried away by anger. As that magic hits towards Kimmy, the Red Eagle says there's no other way, that they'll have to find another relative of Gaia, because this one's done for. But Kimmy, getting up, starts to think that he still has a chance. And Kimmy, thinking quickly, isn't sure if he can survive this or not. But, strangely, Kimmy smiles, because that's not what's most important. And so, raising his sword, Kimmy keeps thinking that he wants to become like his hero, Kangwoo. Then, the brave hero of Earth, Kimmy, thinking of his friend Kangwoo, says he doesn't know who he is, nor what he was in the past. But I do know one thing. He was the one who saved me from the pathetic life I used to have, and put me here as someone who can fight for their own destiny. Then Kimmy starts to use all his power, and the eyes of the hero of Earth begin to shine. Saying you won't run away, Kimmy, using all his strength, unleashes the descending dragon attack, slicing that gigantic sphere of demonic energy in half. And so, the hero of Earth shows that it's not over yet. And after gathering all his energy, he creates a new move, Celestial Dragon Single Flash. And so, the system informs us that Kimmy has also acquired this ability. That flash was so fast and so powerful that the Yellow Eagle demon didn't even have time to blink. And so he says, "What?" But by then, it's already too late. That powerful ability of the hero of Earth slices through the entire arm of that demon with incredible speed. And with that, the demon starts screaming, because how could he have been cut by a pathetic human? But Kimmy doesn't waste any time and charges at Alphas, the Yellow Eagle. Then the others shout to him, "Alphas, dodge, he's coming for you." But Alphas, who is a high-ranking demon, also has quick thinking and realizes he didn't even feel it when his arm was cut off. So, Alphas isn't feeling any pain. What he's feeling is pure embarrassment, because he had his arm cut off in front of his brothers. And so, Alphas, with only one arm, throws Kimmy back to the ground, because this insolent insect, despite being very weak, managed to cut off his arm, and Kimmy is hurled backward with great force. But Alphas is extremely enraged and says, "Human, how dare you do this to me?" But Kimmy doesn't care and goes after Alphas again, targeting his eyes and trying to finish off this demon. Alphas starts to feel pressured by Kimmy, but he knows he's faster than this human. And while Kimmy is giving it his all, that demon keeps thinking that this relative of Gaia moves so slowly that he can see all of his attacks in slow motion. And Kimmy, giving it everything he's got, keeps charging relentlessly at Alphas. However, that demon realizes that Gaia's relative is ridiculously weak, and with just a simple swipe of his claws, he can dodge a blow delivered with all the strength of Kimmy's sword. But Kimmy, completely focused on that battle, keeps thinking he can win, and so he prepares another powerful strike, trying to hit the demon Alphas. And so, Alphas starts thinking, why am I losing to this weak guy? I don't get it. How is it that I, who am faster than him, am about to die to a mere human? And so, Kimmy's strike comes deadly fast toward Alphas' head. Then, the demon Alphas widens his eyes, because Kimmy's deadly blow is already close enough to hit him. But then someone says, "You damn human." And so, the Green Eagle joins the fight and punches Kimmy in the back so hard that it cracks 2 of his vertebrae. With that, the hero of Earth lets out a scream of pain. Of course, right? That punch was so strong that Kimmy goes bouncing away like a sack of crap. Then Alphas looks at the Yellow Eagle and says, "Phoenix, why did you save me?" And Phoenix, the green demon eagle, is really pissed at Alphas and says to him, "What kind of behavior is this? Huh? How can you, Alphas, a great demon, be losing a fight to an inferior human like that? Alphas, you're pathetic, you know? Go to the back and heal your arm. Leave the rest to me." And Alphas, completely humiliated, doesn't even say anything else. And so, Phoenix, the green eagle, flies triumphantly above Kimmy, since this human is so weak he couldn't even take a single punch from him. And so, Phoenix, showing that he's a demon who doesn't do good deeds, lands on Kimmy's leg. And with that, the hero's eyes go wide. Then, Phoenix says to Kimmy, even though she looks like a high-level goddess who's dying, she's still a goddess, but you're nothing. And so, that demonic eagle squeezes Kimmy's leg with tremendous force, breaking the bones in several places.
And so, the hero of Earth, Kimmy, lets out a desperate scream because he has never felt so much pain. But Phoenix doesn't stop there and says, "Hey, human, I've barely started, okay? How dare you cut off the arm of a superior demon?" And so, that green eagle demon starts using small spheres of demonic energy. Then, the torture begins, and the first demonic sphere completely incapacitates Kimmy's right arm, making the hero of Earth scream even louder in pain. But Phoenix isn't going to stop there. So, after that, the demon breaks both of Kimmy's femurs, also destroying one of his knees. Then, Kimmy, feeling the greatest pain of his life, starts writhing on the ground. And the green eagle, still holding his broken leg, starts swinging it from side to side. And so, Kimmy feels his bones cutting through his flesh from the inside. Then, the red eagle looks back and says, "So, alphas, did you lose? Look, after Phoenix kills him, you'll be the one responsible for finding Gaia's incarnation, because since the human cut off your arm, he can't leave here alive." So, the yellow eagle, deeply humiliated, just nods and says she'll do it. And then, Phoenix creates more than a dozen spheres of demonic energy. And Kimmy, seeing that, realizes that this is the end for him. And so, Kimmy realizes how pathetic he is. Then, the hero of the Earth starts to cry, because he didn't want to die like this. So, Kimmy does what he should have done a long time ago, and even without strength, he calls out to Kangwoo, because he thought he was strong enough not to need saving. But then, Kimmy gathers all his strength and says, "Kangwoo, help me." But Kangwoo is very far from there, and the demon alpha says that it's over now, because he's going to break every bone in Kimmy's body and make him die feeling as much pain as possible. Kimmy keeps thinking, even though he had sworn he wouldn't run away, he already knew this would be the ending. So, the hero of the land, with all his limbs broken, remains lying there with a sad look on his face, just feeling all those blows going through his body in a deadly way. And so, he remembers before that when his hero, Alex Osborne, died right in front of him, he couldn't do anything. And not long ago, he remembers the hero of the god Tyrion, who came to Earth and also died at the hands of Satan, and he couldn't do anything. And now, Kimmy knows it's his turn. And so, Kimmy, who still hasn't died, has all the tendons in his hand cut, since none of those blows hit vital points to kill him instantly, but rather to cause as much pain as possible. But Kimmy is sure of one thing: in a few minutes, he'll be dead, because with this level of damage, there's no way he can save himself. But then, something incredibly fast cuts through the sky in that direction. And while Phoenix is delivering the final blow, Kangwoo falls faster than a meteor behind those demons. And so, Phoenix stops his torture and, looking back, asks, What just happened?" Then, Kimmy hears someone call his name, "Hey, Kimmy." And so, the Earth's hero Kimmy, who is about to die, looks toward the newcomer and can't say a word. But then, Kangwoo, who has just arrived at the scene, starts speaking very angrily to Kimmy, "Hey, who told you to fight alone?" But at that moment, the red eagle starts getting into position for battle. Kangwoo looks at Kimmy and says, "Hey, you bastard, why did you do that, huh?" Then, Kangwoo realizes that his friend's injuries are so severe that it's practically a miracle he's not dead. We know he didn't die, that those demons made sure not to hit any vital points just to cause Kimmy as much pain as possible. However, Kangwoo, seeing so many wounds, finds himself thinking that he's not angry or sad, and he can't really feel anything at all. And so, Kangwoo starts wondering if Kimmy means nothing to him, because seeing his friend there on the ground, bleeding and about to die, Kangwoo has only one thought, that Kimmy has a lot of potential. So, our hero begins to walk toward Kimmy, and as he does, he talks to him and says, "Hey Kimmy, why did you tell the others to run while you faced those bastards alone?" Kangwoo knows that even if Kimmy dies, his plans won't change. And as Kangwoo walks freely past those eagles, he keeps talking to Kimmy and says, "Hey, Kimmy, were you trying to act all cool in this state?" And incredibly, the red eagle does nothing as Kangwoo walks past it. Kangwoo thought about how he made Kimmy his familiar, so he could use him however he wanted. And Kamho placed a lot of expectations on Kimmy, because Kimmy has been like a pawn on the chessboard for Kamho. So, Kamho, standing in front of Kimmy, asks him, "Hey, why did you do that? Just because everyone is calling you a hero, you start acting without thinking?" So, Kamho thinks to himself that he almost lost a pawn. And then, the fierce Kamho grabs Kimmy by the collar and lifts him up. Meanwhile, Kimmy, weak and powerless, can only say the name of this hero, Kamho. The king of the nine hells knows he can't get angry, because he can control his emotions to the fullest. But something starts to grow inside Kamho, and he begins to shout, "Hey, you bastard. Did you really think you could beat them? You knew you should have run away? You're not supposed to stay here pretending to be the hero. You can't beat them." And with that, anger and rage begin to well up in Kamho's heart, because something he hadn't felt in a long time started to grow inside him again. So, Kamho starts to feel an almost uncontrollable hatred. And with that, his eyes begin to change. Meanwhile, he keeps yelling at Kimmy, "Hey, Kimmy, I thought you wanted to save these people, and I also thought you wanted to escape from that trauma from your youth. I thought you were someone else." But Kamho starts thinking to himself, why is he yelling with so much anger like that? There's no way he could be this furious. So, while Kangwoo is yelling at Kimmi, because Kimmi, in a reckless move, threw himself toward death without even thinking once about running away from there. But Phoenix, seeing all that nonsense, puts his hand on his face and says, "Hey, man, if you don't want to die, stop talking." Then, when Phoenix blinked, something really fast was already coming his way. Then, Kangwoo, without even looking back, lands a precise blow on Phoenix, and something goes spinning through the air. The Red Eagle and Alphas are shocked when they see what happened. Then they scream, "Phoenix!" Kangwoo shows that he's the toughest of the tough, even without looking back. Covered in all that black blood that came out of Phoenix, he says to the other two, "Hey, I was talking, okay?" And so we can see that Kangwoo's eyes are already completely black, because hatred has filled his heart. So, the badass Kangwoo, possessed by rage, looks at those two demons and says to them, "Hey, you idiots, shut up and don't leave here, got it?" And then, a strange magic starts to stitch up Kimmi's body, making all that bleeding stop. And so, Kangwoo says, "Power of resurrection." At that very moment, all of Kimmi's wounds start to close up by magic, and the one who was about to die from blood loss is finally saved by the baddest of the bad. And so, while he's being healed, Kimmi says to Kangwoo, "Kangwoo, I'm sorry, okay?" But Kangwoo pats him on the back and, still really angry, says to Kimmi, "Look, we'll talk about this later, alright? Let me take care of something here. So just rest, I'll be right back." And so, gritting his teeth in anger, Kangwoo talks to himself, clearly bothered by the whole situation, and, consumed by rage, starts stomping furiously on Phoenix's corpse, trying to vent all the anger he's feeling. And while he's cursing and stomping on that corpse, the Red Eagle demon, seeing all that, is scared out of his wits and keeps wondering, how can he be this strong? He killed Phoenix with just one blow. What kind of monster is this? Is he really even human? And then, the scene flashes back to a long time ago, in another dimension, inside Lucifer's castle, and we see the Red Eagle kneeling before Lucifer, saying that all the preparations to connect the portal to Earth are already complete. And Lucifer, spreading his wings, praises him for a job well done. Then, the Red Eagle dares to ask a question and says, "Lord Lucifer, I have a question. The Satan who is on Earth, could he be a fake? Because I don't know what Satan actually looks like. So it's really hard for me to tell the real one from the fake, since I've never seen Satan before." And then we are shown the face of one of the demon archdukes, Lucifer. And the Red Eagle asks Lucifer if there's any way he could describe Satan's physical characteristics. Lucifer says that no one is crazy enough to try to impersonate Satan. "But I'll tell you what he looks like. Oh, Satan always wears a red mask and he's always dressed in a black cloak that covers his whole body. And more than that, Satan is a crazy bastard. He always acts on impulse, doing whatever he wants. But that crazy bastard is easy to recognize, because what sets him apart from all the other demons is the color of his eyes. Except for Satan, only a handful of demons, you can count them on one hand, have normal eyes, with a white eyeball and a red iris. But when he gets really furious, his eyeball turns completely black. So, if you see someone like that, who can't control their rage, and their eyeball changes color, that's definitely Satan. And just like that, even the Red Eagle has just seen it, a person who can't control themselves, full of fury, whose eyeball changed from white to black. But Lucifer gives the Red Eagle some advice. "Hey, if you see Satan and his eyes turn black, you need to run without looking back, because you're definitely going to die. That guy is a crazy, extremely powerful person." So, when the Red Eagle sees Kangwoo like that, with his eyes shining, he starts thinking, could this be Satan? So, he decides to test the fierce Kangwoo, and starts summoning several spheres of demonic energy, because he's got a doubt, if this really was the true Satan, he wouldn't be with that human. So, the Red Eagle throws all that magic at Kangwoo, trying to wipe him out in one go, because he thinks that the one in front of him must just be someone who can change the color of his eyes, and who looks a lot like Satan. And so, after that, the Red Eagle plans to capture this demon and reveal his true identity. But in the midst of all that explosion, Kangwoo charges at the Red Eagle at incredible speed. But Kangwoo didn't hit him. Strangely, the Red Eagle is startled by that, stumbles, and falls backward, and he keeps thinking, what kind of speed is that? When I blinked, he was already right on top of me. And so, still on the ground, the Red Eagle is filled with rage and says, "How dare you?" Then, conjuring a very powerful spell in his hand, he intends to deliver a fatal blow to this bold enemy. But Kangwoo shows that he's the superior one here, and with his hands, he's able to hold back that magic. And the Red Eagle has a huge question mark on his face and keeps thinking, How did he do that? Because this sphere is a power that Lord Lucifer personally granted us, and only we know how to use this power. There's no way he could hold back this power, and this magic is Kel, a destruction, because it can suck in and crush everything that's near it. But Kangwoo, with a look full of rage, is holding that magic with his bare hands. However, while that demon is surprised that Kangwoo is able to hold back so much of Lord Lu's power with his own hands, our badass Kangwoo starts casting a spell that envelopes that entire ball of energy. But then, we can see that the magic Kangwoo is using is the authority of gluttony. And so, the fierce little mouth quickly wraps itself around the red eagle's arm. And just as the red eagle thought about blinking, the fierce little mouth was already on top of him. But then, someone says, "You bastard, how dare you?" And so, another very powerful spell comes charging dangerously toward Kangwoo. But the tough guy shows he's the toughest of the tough, dodges his head, and gets ready for the humiliation flick. Then, without even turning around and just flicking that deadly spell, Kangwoo sends it right back. And it's so powerful and comes back with such force that it goes straight through the yellow eagle's chest, who now, besides being one-handed, has a huge hole in his chest. And so, the tough guy, full of rage, looks back and says, "Hey, shut up, it's not your turn yet, okay? Stay quiet, I'll finish up here and then I'll come over there." And the red eagle, seeing this, shouts out his friend's name, because that blow was so strong it almost killed his friend instantly. Then, Kangwoo, after hearing the red eagle shouting Alpha's name, looks over, maybe because the demon speaks to him. "Hey, didn't I tell you to stay put? Why did you shout?" Then, Kangwoo twists the demon's arm, breaking it into several pieces. And he also makes those little angry mouths even more intense. And so, while the red eagle is writhing in pain, he begs Kangwoo for forgiveness, and pleads with him to please stop what he's doing, because it hurts so much. Kangwoo, the king of the 9 hells, full of hatred, looks at him and says, "So, you guys like torturing people, huh? So, let me ask you a question. What's 1,000 minus 7? And as Kangwoo says this, he starts to give a devilish grin, because now it's time for ultimate cruelty. The red eagle, still not understanding, says to Kangwoo, "Huh? What did you say, sir? I didn't understand. Is this some kind of game?" But meanwhile, nervous little mouths start eating him alive. Then, Kangwoo, the king of kindness, brutally rips off one of that demon's legs. And so, the red eagle ends up feeling much more pain than before. Then, the king of the 9 hells, Kangwoo, says to the red eagle, "I'm going to repeat it just one more time and I want you to give me the answer." And so, Kangwoo, the king of kindness, puts his hand on top of the red eagle's head and says to him, "What's 1,000 minus 7? And the red eagle, in a lot of pain and scared out of his mind from all the panic he's feeling, answers Kangwoo, 993. It's 993. Then, Kangwoo unleashes even more of his power and says to him, "Next." And the red eagle, totally confused, says, "What? I don't get it." But Kangwoo doesn't want to stop. And so, another angry mouth starts eating another part of that eagle. And he says, "It's 986. Then, Kangwoo shows that he's the king of torture. As the feathers and blood start to fall, the demon red eagle finally gets what Kangwoo wants and starts counting up, going by 7s. And so he says, 979. So, until he reaches the number Kangwoo wants, his claws are ripped out in a very painful way, and his feathers are also being plucked out. Meanwhile, that eagle is already at the number 419. So, in no time, he's already at 272. Then, after a totally humiliating torture and that demon feeling a lot of pain, already having both his wings ripped off, he finally reached a single digit and says, "It's 6. And so, Kangwoo stops the gnashing mouths and says to him, "Yeah, very good job. I liked it, huh? You finally got down to a single digit. Yeah, here, let me tell you something really cool. What we just did now was just practice, okay? Because the real game is about to start now." And so, the red eagle, who was already crying, cries even more because he doesn't understand why he's doing this. And so, he tells Kangwoo that what he's doing doesn't make any sense. But Kangwoo, with all the hatred in his heart, looks at Red Eagle and says to him, "I want you to solve a little problem for me. The number of distinct real roots of 2 equations. And the equations are px equals 0 and qx equals 0. And these numbers are 7 and 9. And the set of xy, such that px times x and q times y equals 0. And if q times x times p times y equals 0, where x and y are real numbers, this becomes an infinite set. So, I want to know about subset B and about subset A, since ax, zy, and with that number of elements, x equals v. So, 15 times n, which equals v, I want to know the answer to this, for the values of px and the values of qx. So, answer this equation for me by solving for the maximum value of nv. You can go ahead and do it. The red eagle, upon hearing this, starts to cry and thinks, "Man, what a crazy equation is this? I didn't understand anything. I think I'm going to die, and I didn't even know that if I studied a lot of math, I could save my life. Now it's too late. I cheated on all the tests and even leveled up the teacher in quadratic equations. Now it's over for me." And so, little Kangwoo, full of kindness, stretches out his arms and starts to yawn, but now he's managed to calm down. The anger he was feeling just went away. Yeah, it was worth it. That was really relaxing. Kangwoo realizes that he almost got himself into trouble because he got irritated, since that made him lose his head for a brief moment. And for a demon whose desires and emotions are in constant conflict, getting angry is really dangerous.
And so, Kangwoo, with his hands in his pockets and no irritation left, remembers that the last time he got angry was when he killed his mother, and that the aftermath of that was pretty serious. But Kangwoo, looking at his reflection on his phone, realizes that he's already back to normal, that the relaxing session back there was really good, and it was enough to calm him down. Then Kangwoo remembers that that bastard Satan was just like him, constantly getting irritated, so Kangwoo finds it really unfortunate that he resembles that bastard in this way. And so, Kangwoo starts walking calmly toward the yellow eagle, which still isn't dead. And then he says, "Hey, stop pretending to be dead, I know you're alive." Then Kangwoo, very delicately, steps on the wound on the eagle's chest and says to him, "I know you're pretending. Look, if I shake my foot like this, let's see if you can take it." And after that, Alphas lets out a loud scream and Kangwoo says to him, "See, I knew you were alive, okay? Hey, you bastard, let me ask you something. Are you Lucifer's familiars?" And Alphas, very surprised, asks Kangwoo, "Wait, how do you know?" Kangwoo thinks to himself that he met some demons he'd never seen before, and since they were using Lucifer's powers, they could only be his familiars. And that only means one thing, that Lucifer has already regained his powers and is back at his peak. If Lucifer sent these demons to Earth, it only means one thing, that he's already given up on fighting the angels and is coming to Earth. And as Kangwoo thinks about all this, he knows it's really annoying. So Kangwoo asks Alphas, "What are you guys doing here on Earth?" And Alpha says he can't say. But Kangwoo, pointing behind him, says, "See your buddy back there? He's still alive, okay? Do you want to end up like him?" But then, the Red Eagle, who didn't even finish high school, is still thinking the maximum value of the MB equation is. He doesn't know, because he cheated on the test, didn't learn the material, messed up his report card, and gave his parents the wrong grade. So now it's time to suffer. You don't know a simple equation like that? I know one thing, my subscribers know, right subscribers? Or Matt subscriber? Put the answer to this equation in the comments. So, the yellow eagle, not wanting to end up like that, starts to spill everything. "Look, the reason we came to Earth was to find Satan." And Kangwoo is surprised. "Why? Is Satan really on Earth?" So Kangwoo, upon hearing this answer, starts pressing even harder on that wound and says, "Hey, explain something. You're here on Earth looking for Satan, is that it?" And Alpha says yes, because a long time ago the hero god Tyrion was destroyed here in this world, and it was at the hands of Satan. So Lord Lucifer gave us this mission to come to Earth and find Satan, and asked for his cooperation. And that's when Kangwoo realizes that they're not after Satan, but after him, since he pretended to be Satan. For a brief moment, Kangwoo felt a bit scared, because he's not at the peak of his strength yet, and if Satan really were on Earth, then that would be a problem. But then, Kangwoo has an insight and says, "Wait a minute, Satan is on Earth. After all, I am Satan, and I already know what I'm going to do. Done badly is still done. This is going to be great, because the one who killed the protector Lex Born, I said it was Satan. And who killed Reynaldo, the apostle of Tyrion? Everyone also thinks it was Satan. So, for sure, it was Satan. Let's use that to my advantage." And so, Kangwoo says to Alphas, "Hey, how much do you know about Satan?" And that demon, full of fear and lying on the ground, said he didn't know much. However, what he does know is that Satan is building a big family in this world and greatly increasing his power, and that Satan is fiercely fighting against Gaia's family. Alpha says that's all he knows, and then Kangwoo says to him, "Yeah, right? Looks like you don't know much, huh?" So Kangwoo, planning to use this to his advantage, starts to smile, deactivating the ruling ability of the demonic energy. His true energy begins to flood that place, and then Kangwoo keeps smiling widely as a powerful explosion of demonic energy starts to cover the whole area. He laughs in Alpha's face, saying, "Yeah, you said you don't know much, right? But let me tell you something, you really don't know anything at all, because you said you came to meet Satan, but you're standing right in front of him, and that's what I find so funny." And Alphas is startled and says, "What?" Then Kangwoo puts on that mask he had stolen, and when Alpha sees this, he starts wondering if this man is really Satan, because there's no way this guy could be Satan. How would Satan protect Gaia's family? And besides, why would he attack us? He must definitely be human. But then, Kangwoo, the very embodiment of kindness, says to him, "Why are you looking at me like that? Come here, let me help you out a bit. Hold this I still right here." And just like that, Kangwoo brutally rips out the eye of that demonic eagle, and it sure looks like it hurt, huh? Because Alpha starts screaming, while Kangwoo just laughs in his face. Kangwoo is really clever, because he knows that if he rips out a sensitive spot from Alphas, Alphas will feel even more of the demonic energy, and that's exactly what Alphas is feeling, because the demonic energy he's sensing now comes from that red mask. And these crazy actions only prove one thing, this man is definitely Satan. Now, Alphas realizes it was foolish of him to attack one of the princes of hell, since he couldn't recognize him. And so, Alphas, says Kangwoo, "Lord Satan, will you forgive me?" And Kangwoo, with a big smile, says to him, "Oh, I see, huh? Now you're getting it, right? So you're saying that Lucifer just asked for a partnership with me?" Explain in more detail what exactly he wants. Go ahead, tell me. Alpha says something that scares Kangwoo because Lucifer told him to mention only one thing, that Lucifer wants to obtain the demonic sea. And Kangwoo starts thinking, what? You wants to obtain the demonic sea? And so, Kangwoo starts to smile because that bastard Lucifer was after the power of the ruler of the new ill. Kangwoo doesn't know how, but Lucifer is trying to team up with Satan to hunt him down in that world. And so, Kangwoo knows that Lucifer is only doing this because he hasn't been beaten enough yet. Back in hell, after Kangwoo gained a lot of power, he declared war on all the princes of hell. Even though he suffered dozens of losses, in the end, he became the champion of hell. He was the winner of that war, because he managed to kill all the new princes of hell and take their power. But Kangwoo explains that it wasn't because of his great strength that he managed to defeat the princes of hell, because if it had been just about raw power, he definitely would have lost. Kangwoo tells himself that he's going to do the same thing he did to conquer hell, and so, grabbing Alphas by the neck, he says, "Hey, tell that bastard Lucifer that he doesn't know anything. Do you know why I created the demon horde, huh?" And Alphas, without giving any answer, just trembles, knowing that this crazy demon could kill him at any moment. But then, Kangwoo, grinning widely and imitating Satan, says that the demonic sea is already with him and he wants to absorb all that power. It's just a matter of time. And so, Kang confesses that the demonic sea is already in Satan's hands, but he hasn't fully absorbed it yet. So, Kangwoo makes his move, which is to pit one against the other, and he says, "Hey, One Eye, answer me something, is Lucifer on the continent of Eleanor?" And Alpha says yes. And so, while tightening his grip a bit more on Alpha's neck, Kangwoo tells that demon that he's getting really bored of staying on Earth, and that soon he's going to pay Lucifer a little visit. But then, unexpectedly, Kangwoo throws Alphas far away, and he goes bouncing off like a ping pong ball. And now, Alphas, missing an arm, with a hole in his chest and completely humiliated, is left lying on the ground. However, Kangwoo still hasn't killed him. So, Kangwoo gives him a warning and says, "Hey, I'm only letting you live so you can deliver a message to Lucifer. Tell him that I'm going to take my family there, the demonic order, and soon I'll head to the continent of Eleanor to finish him off." And Alphas, badly beaten and lying on the ground, says to Kangwoo, "Lord Satan, you can't do this. We want to be your allies." But Kangwoo starts conjuring a spell in his hand and says to Alphas, "Hey, that's not how you talk to me, Lucifer's familiar. I am the great Lord Satan." When Kangwoo says this, he expands his aura even more, spreading his demonic energy throughout the entire region. And then, Kangwoo, who loves a job well done, especially when it's evil, tells Alphas to send a message to Lucifer. From now on, he's declaring war against him, because Kangwoo wants them to fight each other. That's how he defeated all the princes of hell, by turning them against one another. Then, just a short time later, a dimensional portal starts to open, and every portal of this color leads to the continent of Eleanor. And it's shown to us that the one who opened this portal was the high-ranking demon Alphas. And before he steps into the portal, he warns Kangwoo, saying that he'll regret it, because going against Lord Lucifer is asking to die. And then Kangwoo says to him, "Alright, but how long are you going to just stand there? Are you waiting for me to rip off your other arm?" So, full of resentment, Alpha steps into the portal and says, "Satan, right? Demonic order. You'll see, I'm going to tell my boss everything about this. He will definitely take revenge on you, and soon you'll realize the huge mistake you've made." And with that, the portal closes. Meanwhile, that talkative demon eagle wouldn't stop threatening Kangwoo, who was disguised as Satan. Then, Kangwoo starts smiling like a madman, because once again he has sown discord and knows that these two enemies will end up killing each other in a brutal way, since if Lucifer takes too long to attack Satan, Satan will be able to fully absorb the sea of demonic energy. So, it's going to be a race against time. Then, Kangwoo starts lamenting, because he let a high-ranking demon escape. But this was for the greater good, because if that demon escapes, he'll bring back other very tasty demons for him. And besides, the war between Lucifer and the demonic order is going to be a beautiful thing to watch. And so, Kangwoo, using the authority of gluttony, sends out even more ravenous mouths to finish what he started. And so, as he devours the body of that great red eagle alive, the soul feeder skill is activated. But Kangwoo hasn't forgotten about Phoenix, because that demon seems very appetizing, and so, ravenous mouths begin to tear apart and eat that body. And so, Kangwoo says to himself, "Man, how many more demons am I going to have to consume to reach the state of a demonic spirit, huh?" But then, at that very moment, the system, as if it had heard him, informs Kangwoo that he has met the first condition to awaken the demonic spirit. And so, the system also tells Kangwoo that the maximum amount of energy he can acquire is 130, and that the system's level restriction has also been weakened. So, Kangwoo immediately rises to level 189, achieving his 8th awakening, and still in disbelief at what just happened, he's there reading all those messages, because he finally managed to reach the first condition. With that, a deeper path to the core of the demons is further expanded, and the souls he absorbed with the Soul Harvester ability expand this path even more.
So now, Kangwoo is just pure happiness, because what he needed to become stronger has finally happened to him, and he keeps thinking that all of this was thanks to absorbing the souls of those high demons. And so, opening his system window, Kangwoo starts to read what ability he gained with his 8th awakening. And there it is, 8th awakening, full of question marks, rank also full of question marks. And Kangwoo says, you'll only be able to find out what you gained from the 8th awakening when you manage to reach 130 demonic energy. And if you remember, Kangwoo already has more than 120 demonic energy, which is the maximum a human can have. After that, Kangwoo closes the status window and tells himself that at least the level restriction has been raised. Now, he can get a little stronger, since the level cap he thought could only be raised by killing protectors can also be raised by killing high-ranking demons. And so we have that scene where Kangwoo was really tempted to kill Kimmy in order to increase his potential. And now the protagonist of our story has a new goal, to reach 130 demonic energy. Because Kangwoo knows that the seed of evil he planted will make Lucifer very restless, since knowing that Satan is on Earth and that there's a sea of demonic energy, he won't just sit still. He'll get ready and come to Earth to claim that demonic sea for himself. So, Kangwoo knows that if Lucifer comes to Earth, he'll go to war against the demonic order, and a lunatic of that magnitude can't possibly go unnoticed in the world. So, Kangwoo's plan is just that, to stay put and reap the benefits by using the names of the Guardians. And when he says benefits, he means the bodies of high-level demons. However, there's a big problem. Kangwoo knows that Lucifer isn't stupid, and he knows it's only a matter of time before Lucifer finds out the truth. However, Kangwoo isn't the least bit worried about that, because now he has only one goal, to reach 130 demon energy. Since Lucifer thinks it was Satan who killed Tyrion, he'll also approach with caution, believing that Satan has become very powerful. And so, once again, Kangwoo thanks the great hero god Tyrion, because before his death, that god managed to spread the word that the demon of prophecy, Satan, was the one who killed him. And so, Kangwoo is certain that Tyrion truly is the hero god, because with the last of his life he still managed to send a message, and that's the mark of a hero, someone who sacrificed himself to the very end. Kangwoo promises to honor the sacrifice of god Tyrion, because he was a true hero. This Kangwoo is really shameless, man. Then, sometime later, someone starts to open their eyes and Kangwoo says, "You finally woke up, huh?" Kimmy looks around and says, "Kangwoo? I thought I was dead." Then Kangwoo tells him, "Hey Kimmy, don't make any sudden movements, okay? Because you're not completely healed yet." Kangwoo knows that the power of resurrection can heal all wounds, but fatigue and internal injuries that the authority of resurrection can't cure. And so, Kangwoo says to him, "Hey Kimmy, explain something to me. Why did you keep fighting like an idiot even though you knew you were going to lose? You knew you had to wait for the right moment and then run away, right? Because everyone else had already escaped. There was no one else left there, and Kimmy, looking really down, can't even answer Kangwoo." So the tough guy remembers who told Taisu about escaping from that place, and Alice said to him, "Hey, Kimmy stayed there fighting alone." And so Kangwoo tells Kimmy that if he hadn't run into Alice, he definitely would have died. Then Kimmy starts getting ready to apologize, but Kangwoo says to him, "Hey Kimmy, you need to stop trying to impress everyone all by yourself. You're not fighting alone. Stop trying to act like that. Don't feel guilty, okay?" And when Kimmy hears these words, he even feels embarrassed. Then Kimmy says to him, "Kangwoo, you seem really different from usual. What happened?" Kangwoo, grinning from ear to ear because he just had his 8th awakening, starts smiling at him and says, "What? I'm different?" At that moment, Alice Dae-soo starts running toward Kangwoo, asking if he's okay. And we also see that Grace and Gaia have arrived at that place too, and Gaia says to Kangwoo, "Kangwoo, I heard that demons attacked Kimmy. Is he okay?" Kangwoo says that he's much better, that most of his injuries have already healed, and that Kimmy is only alive because he got there in time and defeated the demons. "But Gaia, how did you show up here?" Then, Chun Moo-jin replies that she's here because he got in touch with her and asked for her help. And Chun Moo-jin also explains that he had also detected traces of the demonic order in that place, and that he had already contacted Miss Gaia even before Kimmy was attacked. Then Kangwoo says to him, "Traces? What traces?" And then, Chun Moo-jin looks back and says, "Aren't those the rift seeds you were collecting earlier?" "Well, we found some of them right here." And so he looks back and Chulin is really happy, holding one in her hand. Chun Moo-jin tells Kangwoo that the seed was in the middle of an altar, and meanwhile, sweet Chulin winks at Kangwoo and says it's really heavy and that she brought it just for him. When Kangwoo realizes that it's actually a rift seed, he's really surprised, and since the rift seed is so clean, it seems like it was placed there just recently. So Chulin, struggling a lot, starts carrying that rift seed, internally wishing that Kangwoo would come help her because she wants to be close to her man. So Chulin, shining brightly and waiting for Kangwoo, stands there pretending it's really heavy, but the little redhead. Looking back, she realizes that Zuling is hitting on Kangwoo right in front of her. However, Kangwoo's thoughts are far away, because if there's a rift seed there, then the demonic order is definitely in that place. And if there's a demonic order, there are plenty of demons to be devoured. Bianca explains to Kangwoo that the monsters around the altar were much more powerful.
And Kim Mai, who is now having her internal organs healed by Alice's magic, says that now everything makes sense, since it must have been the demonic order that attacked this village. But Kangwoo knows that one thing has nothing to do with the other, because the demons that appeared that don't belong to the demonic order, they are actually Lucifer's familiars. But then, the girls start arguing, since Vuling can't carry that thing because it's too heavy, and the little redhead shows she's much stronger than her and says, "Here, give me that, let me take this to Kangwoo, okay?" Bianca also explains that, judging by the way that altar looked, it's very likely there are many more altars, and she comes to a conclusion, saying that the demonic order is definitely trying to perform a major summoning at this place. And so our Kangwoo even starts crying from happiness, because all he needed was lots and lots of demons to reach 130 demonic energy, and the demonic order, which had been missing for so long, showed up right now when he needed it most, since Kangwoo was already lost, not knowing how to increase his demonic energy to reach 130. However, the blessed demonic order has just prepared a very loving meal for him, so Kangwoo, putting his hands together, starts to thank the demonic order and says, "I never doubted you, demonic order. You guys are true friends, because they're always working in his favor, bringing him delicious meals." Kangwoo thanks the great leader of the demonic order for helping him in such a difficult moment. The redhead notices that he's acting really strange, almost as if he's thanking the great god Tyrion for helping him in this battle. And so, seeing Kangwoo acting like a madman, she thinks to herself, here he goes again, making those faces and gestures. And Gaia was surprised and says, "What? The demonic order is here?" Then Grace asks if they should go straight to the summoning altar and finish everything. But Gaia tells her, no, because Protector Kim Mai is still hurt. Then Kim Mai gets up and says, "No, I'm fine." And Alice, who still hasn't finished her healing, thinks to herself, what a nutcase, of course he's not fine. But Gaia shows that she puts her subordinates first and says, "No, we're not going, it's too dangerous." And Kim Mai is surprised and says, why? Gaia says that they don't know anything about the enemy, and what they need to do now is buy time and assess the strategy the enemy is using, and then request help from the other nations. And the tough Kangwoo says to her, "But Gaia, if we give them time, the situation could get even more dangerous, because we need to attack them as quickly as possible before they complete that summoning." Then, Gaia says she knows that, but it's still very dangerous. But the tough Kangwoo approaches Gaia and says he knows why she's so worried. "I know that you, Gaia, don't want us to die at the hands of the demons, like Reynaldo and Alex Osborne did. But we can't protect anyone if we're afraid of death." And Kangwoo's words get to Gaia and make her reflect on it. Kangwoo says he wants to be a brave fool, but we, Gaia, are not running toward death blindly in the name of justice. Then Kangwoo activates his demon energy governing ability again, and his ring starts transforming into another weapon. And so, with Kangwoo's ring transforming into a sword similar to Reynaldo's sword, the brave one says he knows the demons are very strong enemies, but they're not invincible. And that he realized something after all this communication. Kangwoo says that the damage caused by the demonic order increases as time goes by. And so, Kangwoo, amplifying his aura and pretending it's a divine aura, looks at Gaia and says that there are only a few people in this village, but they are protectors, and what they need to do is protect the people here. Kangwoo, shouting and sounding like a hero, says that even though the number of lives here is small, those lives are important. Then he looks at the audience, trying to see their reactions, because what he just said was really amazing. Gaia is deep in thought. Grace is stunned, thinking that Kangwoo is the real hero. And Kangwoo thinks that everyone there really liked what he said. And Kangwoo is internally hoping that people won't laugh at him for what he just said. Then the incarnation of the earth goddess, Gaia, starts talking to Kangwoo. "Hey, Kangwoo, you're right. I've been really cowardly." And Kangwoo starts thinking, what? Did it work? Did she fall for it? Like you said, Kangwoo, we are guardians. We must protect the world. So, you're right. If we're afraid of death, we won't be able to protect anyone. And Kangwoo is eternally grateful that she didn't laugh at him. Then, Kangwoo talks to them. Cheon-jin shows us the way, because right now we're going to the place where these summons are being performed. Meanwhile, the redhead with the rift seed approaches Kangwoo. Then she stops in front of him and says, "Hey, Kangwoo, I think I'm going to throw up. You were so cringe just now." Then she turns her back and says to him, "Kangwoo, do things, but do them in moderation, okay?" That was way too cringe. And just like that, she turns her back and walks away, and the tough guy is left thinking, crazy woman. Then the scene changes to something speeding by at high speed. And that's when we see that it's a bunch of demons. And they're saying, "What? Humans? How nice. I want to taste what human blood is like." Then, "I'm going first." But the big guy pushes everyone out of his way and says, "No, I'm going first." And then he says, "Pathetic mortals, come meet your death. I'm going to devour you, for I am the ruler of the eighth hell. I, Jirajex, will devour you." But Kangwoo doesn't seem to be messing around. He arrives at the scene at high speed, swinging his staff upward with a lot of force. And then the badass looks ahead, realizing that these demons are quite different from the ones before, since the demonic order always summoned lesser demons, but these new demons are much stronger. So, the two demons in front are mourning Jirajak's death, because Kangwoo came in hard, killed their boss, and left the rest of them scared. Kangwoo realizes that the demons in front of him are mostly from the 7th hell, and the strongest among them are from the 8th hell. And so he starts to smile, because this meal is going to be very appetizing. Then Kangwoo thinks that the demonic order has finally managed to summon demons from the 8th hell. Then, hearing that explosion, a member of the demonic order performs his summoning and looks back. But nearby, Kangwoo keeps moving forward, while several powerful demons charge at him. And Alice is back there, really worried about Kangwoo. And she says, Kangwoo. But Cheon-jin, seeing how Kangwoo is moving, asks Alice, how does he do that? Is he really human? But Kim-mai, back there, gives an explanation, saying that Kangwoo received the power of the hero god Tyrion, and that recently he became an apostle of that god. And Cheon-jin, seeing Kangwoo slicing through several demons with a single blow, asks Kim-mai if that's the power of a god. And Kim-mai says yes, that is the power of a god, and that's why Kangwoo is so strong. But suddenly, someone very strong and angry arrives at the scene and says, hey, cut the chatter, okay? Let's talk about the details later. Now it's time for action, and with that, she fires her legendary weapon. Then, the redhead, ready for battle, says that everyone there has to give it their all. So, let's go do our job. And so, they all get ready for the fight. But a child who was about to be sacrificed tried to scream. However, someone spoke to him. Kid, stay quiet, okay? Or I'll kill you before it's time. And that demonic hive is scared out of its mind and keeps thinking, how did these players know we were here? We're in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, at the edge of the universe, and they still managed to find us. So, he keeps watching that person walk by, and realizes that the one passing through that place is the little redhead killer, the leader of the Red Rose. So the little redhead, who is now world ranked, looks in the direction of that cultist and says to him, hey, you'd better get out of there if you don't want to die. So that cultist throws each child behind him, gathers all his courage, and runs away from the little redhead, because he doesn't want to die there. Then, while he's running away, giving it everything he's got, something quickly rushes toward that cultist. So, scared out of his mind, he looks back and realizes that those blood chains are already getting way too close to him. There's no way he can escape. And then the little redhead finally catches that cultist, squeezing him with her chains that wrap all around his body. But while one of those cultists is being restrained, the other one runs past yelling, I want my mom, let me get out of here. And the little redhead looks in that direction and says, hey, do you think you can run away from me too? Someone steps in front of the little redhead and says, hold on a second, little redhead. And the little redhead asks why Kangwoo stopped her from going after that cultist. Kangwoo, holding that child in his arms, says there's something very important for him to do. If we let him escape, he'll call for help. So, what we need to do is wait for him to do that and catch as many cultists as possible. So that guy who got away, he's going to be our bait, and the one who escaped is really doing that, pulling out his Bola phone 16 and calling for urgent reinforcements. Then, after that guy calls for help, he gets captured too. And then, after capturing those 4 cultists, Gaia stands up and asks them, hey, why are you following someone as evil as Satan? And why did Satan kill Ronaldo Alex Bourne? And furthermore, why are you killing people? What are you trying to achieve with all this? Gaia, wanting to know why the demonic order is doing this, killing their protectors and trying to kill people, leaves all of them confused. And one of the cultists starts to speak and says, what? Us, following Satan's orders? What are you talking about? And Gaia is startled and says, what do you mean by that? And the cultist asks Gaia, when you say Alex, are you referring to the Sword of Justice who attacked our location in Europe a few months ago? If you're talking about him, the demonic order stopped going after him around the same time, since we couldn't find any trace of him. And besides, this Ronaldo you're talking about is a name we've never even heard of. And Gaia, hearing this, is really puzzled, saying that this doesn't make any sense. And then, the cultist says to her, from the way you're talking, it seems like you want to avenge these people. I know you don't believe anything I'm saying, but the demonic order has nothing to do with this, okay? Then, at that very moment, a red flash quickly passes by that cultist. And so, we can see that it's Kangwoo, who arrived at that place and performed a complete decapitation with great ease. Then, with her eyes shining in intense gold, Kangwoo starts yelling at that cultist and says, how dare you try to deceive us? And one of the cultists, absolutely terrified, asks Kangwoo what he's doing. And Kangwoo, with Ronaldo's remains pointed at the cultist, starts yelling at him, hey, did you think I wouldn't know that you killed my son Ronaldo? And the cultist asks Kangwoo, who is this Ronaldo? But Kangwoo, with her eyes glowing gold, tells the cultist to shut up, saying that he's trash and doesn't deserve to be heard. And so, Kangwoo casts a powerful spell in that place, completely annihilating all those cultists. And the name of that move is Judgment of Light, because Kangwoo unleashed an extremely intense light magic. And Gaia says to Grace, Grace, is he talking about your son? Could it be that Tyrion has reincarnated in Kangwoo? And Kangwoo is there, totally putting on an act, saying, how dare you try to deceive me? You also killed Gaia's son. And then someone says, Tyrion, is that you? Then Kangwoo looks back with his eyes glowing gold and a divine aura pulsing around him and tells Gaia not to be fooled by these bastards because these demon worshippers are truly evil and will try to deceive you. And Gaia apologizes to Tyrion. Then Kangwoo, pointing his sword at those dead cultists, tells Gaia not to listen to the words of demons because they will try to seduce and deceive you. They will use the sweetest words possible. Gaia tells Tyrion that she understands, and then she says to him, but Tyrion, I thought you had died, that you had been completely wiped out, because in that past incident, you were totally undone. And Kangwoo, still pretending to be Tyrion, starts sweating and says to her, yes, you're right. I lost my divinity. It was completely extinguished, and now I am simply an empty shell that has lost all the power of a god. Kangwoo, putting on quite an act, says that he won't have many chances to manifest in Kangwoo's body, but that he gathered all his strength to be able to bring this message. Then, with a fierce look and clenching his fist, Kangwoo, pretending to be the god Tyrion, tells the heroes not to let themselves be deceived by the demons. The moment you start to hear the demons' voices, they can corrupt you with their evil mindset. And so, Tyrion tells Gaia that if she looks into the abyss will look back at her. So, Kangwoo, who was doing all this with his ruling ability over demonic energy, since he can make his demonic energy look like any energy he wants, even holy energy, undoes his golden eyes and stands wide-eyed, looking all around. And then, Kangwoo looks from side to side and says to them, what just happened? Kimmy approaches Kangwoo and explains to him that Tyrion took over his body, came here, and killed all those cultists. And Kangwoo, playing dumb, says, what? Did that really happen? I thought Tyrion was dead. But Kimmy, who's really gullible, explains to Kangwoo that Tyrion's divinity was indeed extinguished, but his soul still remains inside you, Kangwoo. And so, Kangwoo, looking at his own body, starts thinking that now he understands, that he didn't even know the soul of a god was living inside him. But then, Kangwoo, with a mischievous look, starts thanking the god Tyrion. But this time, he got away thanks to him, because by pretending to be Tyrion, he was able to kill everyone from the demonic order, and now no one will be able to ask endless questions about the demonic order. While Kangwoo is looking at that body, he starts thinking about all the questions and answers those cultists had given to Gaia. If he hadn't been quick, he would definitely have gotten into trouble. Gaia is really happy to know that Tyrion was watching them closely, but Kangwoo looks one way and Grace looks the other, and they both put on a serious face. But Kangwoo says to her, Gaia, I think we have company. And looking around, they realize they're surrounded by countless demons, both in the forest and in the sky, and everyone that gets ready to face a fierce battle that's about to begin. But Kangwoo is all smiles, because the demons showed up at the perfect time, since the questions were piling up. And so, Kangwoo, who isn't about to just stand still, right? He'll be the first to run toward the enemies, because just standing there answering all those questions is really exhausting. Then, a really ugly demon with a bull's face starts laughing and says, so that idiot Jerajax, he really died? And what's more, they were defeated by a human and still asked for backup. So, those demons promise to carve fear into all those insolent humans who dare to face them. 3 golden strikes appear on the body of that big demon. And of course, it's Kangwoo speeding by at lightning speed, slicing up all those demons without even looking back, because his food just arrived from iFood and he can't miss out on that delicious snack. And so, Kangwoo, looking like a madman, keeps thinking that this place is just too delicious, since some very tasty demons have just arrived fresh for him. And so, Kangwoo promises himself to always be in that place to enjoy appetizing meals at the demon restaurant. So, while that fight goes on, another demon cultist who had come to help sees the whole scene and starts thinking, why is this happening? Why are the demons, who are supposed to be so powerful, losing this easily? What is this? Meanwhile, Kangwoo keeps slicing up all those demons as if they were made of paper. But it's not just Kangwoo, because there are a lot of world-class rankers at that place. And that cultist realizes that his incredibly powerful demons are being defeated with ease, and so the bald Cyclops demon starts getting squeezed by the redhead's blood chains. And the redhead, looking more like a spider, traps countless demons with her blood chain and starts squeezing them in a deadly way, not giving any of them a chance to escape. And that cultist also recognizes the redhead, since she's a very famous world-class ranker. And what's more, he looks to the side and sees Grace, the #1 ranker in the world, is also there teaming up with the redhead. While one captures, the other kills with ease. And so he starts counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 world-class rankers in this place, since Cheon Mungji and Kim Mai are also world-class rankers fighting against their demons. He realizes that if they keep going like this, that guy's summoning ceremony might actually be interrupted. So, he gives an order to those demons and says, hey, hold on just a little longer, we're almost there. And Kangwoo, hearing this, gets really excited and quickly charges toward that cultist, saying to him, "You want me to wait a little longer? But hey, what do you think will happen if we keep waiting just a bit more? Come on, see if you can handle this little punch right here." Meanwhile, Kangwoo's fist comes flying down mercilessly on that cultist. And it was such a well-landed punch that the cultist was knocked right out of our frame, sent flying outside. But the cultist only flew about 100 meters, because there was a very kind tree that stopped his flight, and so he hit his head really hard on that tree, feeling a lot of pain. But the cultist, who still isn't dead, puts his hand on his head, feeling a lot of pain. And Kangwoo comes up to him and says, "There's no one around us, okay? So, tell me something, what are you waiting for? Tell me." And the cultist, really angry, says to Kangwoo, "What, you think I'm going to tell you?" And Kangwoo says, "Hey, I know you joined the demonic cult because you wanted to live forever, right? You want to be immortal? So, let me show you something really cool, the authority of fear." And then, the demon Ouroboros appears at that spot and starts inflicting a primordial fear on the cultist's soul. Then Kangwoo says to him, "Hey, what's the point of being immortal if you're going to die right now? Because you won't even get the chance to be immortal. I admire your loyalty to the demons, but what's the point of that? If you don't tell me, you're going to die right now." And then Ouroboros does his part and makes the cultist even more afraid. And so Kangwoo says to him, "Do you want to live or not? Then you'd better tell me." The cultist, scared out of his mind, looks at Kangwoo hoping his life will be spared. Then, under the effect of the absolute fear ability, Kangwoo, being a huge liar, says to him, "Look, I promise you, okay? If you tell me the truth, I guarantee you'll live. So, I swear by the name of the hero god Tyrion that if you tell me, I won't kill you." And the cultist, hearing the hero swear by the name of the hero god Tyrion, is sure he'll make it out of here alive. And Kangwoo says, "Yes, I won't kill you, because Tyrion is the god I serve." The cultist has heard of the heroes of Gaia, who work for that goddess. However, the one standing in front of him, he's never heard of before. But since he's swearing by the name of a god, he must also be someone who serves under a god. And so, that cultist, who was still afraid, starts to smile. And he starts thinking, these heroes, they're so cliché, they're chosen by a god and swear by his name. So, I'm definitely going to make it out of here alive. And so, that cultist knows that now he has a chance to live, because he knows that being a hero and making a promise in the name of a god is very risky for that hero. And so, on his knees, he starts to spill everything. Then, Kangwoo gets really happy, because that cultist tells him that the ceremony they're preparing is to summon demon number 1. We're not told which demon they're going to summon, but Kangwoo is there, grinning, just waiting for him to finish talking so he can kill him right after. Then, nearby, a very intense golden light starts to appear in the sky, and we can tell it's Alice's magic, since she has become a very proficient healing mage. And so, she says, "Wave of light," and a very powerful healing magic begins to envelop everyone in that place. Shion Munjin is stunned and says, "That's incredible. She didn't just heal our injuries, this magic also restored all my exhaustion. And what's more, the mental stress I had from the battle has just been healed. This magic heals both the body and the soul." Zulum jumps forward and says, "No, that's not all, Dad. This magic also improved my skin. It's so much more radiant now. How cool is that? I've never seen magic like this before." And Kim Mai, who had never seen Alice use this magic, says to her, "Alice, since when have you been able to use a spell like that?" Alice says that this was the magic she gained with her 8th awakening. Meanwhile, Grace is thinking that she feels so refreshed, it's as if she just woke up. Then, Alice, looking at Kangwoo, who had already received her magic, walks toward him and says, "Hey, Kangwoo, you must be more tired than everyone else, right? I'm going to use my magic on you again, okay?" The redhead points to herself and says, "Hey, I want some too, okay?" But Alice ignores the redhead and heals only Kangwoo. And the redhead gives Kangwoo a dirty look, while he's smiling at Alice as if he's in love. But the redhead, who also really likes Kangwoo, thinks to herself, what's so pretty about her? I'm prettier than she is. I'm cute and rich. Kangwoo knows that ever since his stats went over 100 to 20, Alice's magic hasn't had any effect on him anymore. However, this full recovery magic, which restores body, mind, and even stress, is truly groundbreaking. And so it's shown to us that Kangwoo, after that cultist confessed, also took some damage, because he broke his promise. But Alice, with her healing power, even healed that damage he had suffered. So, Kangwoo knows he didn't have to kill that guy, but a dead person never confesses to anything. So, why not kill? Then, the redhead, looking at the center of the summoning altar, asks Kangwoo, "Kangwoo, is it over now?" "You know why? I'm not sensing any more cultists around here, so I think this summoning is over." Right? Now, what I find really interesting is that the corpses of all the demons are disappearing, just like what happened with that demon Oryx. Only the bodies of the cultists are left at the scene. And so, Kimmy says to her, "Yeah, I noticed that just a little while ago too. After all the demons died, they were surrounded by a black smoke and suddenly vanished." And Grace says that this is really strange, because the times she captured a demon, this didn't happen. How weird. And Kimmy continued her explanation, saying that demons are different from one another, and that the little he knows about demons doesn't allow him to give any definite answers about anything. Kangwoo realizes that he absorbed all those demons, but still hasn't managed to reach 130 units of demonic energy. Kangwoo thought this would take a long time, since he was waiting for Lucifer to show up with the demons from the other dimension so he could finally raise his demonic energy. But now, the situation is very different. Then, Grace looks at Gaia and notices that she's different, and it seems like she's feeling something. And so we're shown what that cultist from the demonic order told Kangwoo, that they're preparing the summoning of a demon from the ninth hell. And then she gets startled and says, "What? They're preparing the summoning of the demon from the ninth hell?" And Kangwoo says to Gaia, "Huh? What did you say?" Everyone there gets scared by what Gaia said, and Gaia explains that this was a revelation given by the goddess Gaia, and that now, Gaia has given us a mission. And so, Gaia's incarnation starts to share the mission she received from the goddess Gaia with everyone there. And Kangwoo, seeing this, realizes that he just received a special S-rank mission to prevent the demon from the ninth hell from being summoned. And what's more, there's no reward at all if he manages to stop it. So, the goddess Gaia even apologizes, because that's all she can do for now. And then you get curious. Go. He received a mission from the goddess Gaia, and the narrator can't explain that to you. Why does Gaia's incarnation, who's sitting on Grace's lap, receive a mission from the goddess Gaia? So, subscriber, if you know how to explain it to me, let me know in the comments. Kangwoo, after seeing this message, knows that all he needs to do is absorb a demon from the ninth hell to reach 130 demonic energy. That under no circumstances will he let Gaia ruin his plans by trying to stop this summoning. And so, everyone realizes that the summoning isn't over yet. Gaia says they must stop this demon from the ninth hell from being summoned. The redhead points at Kangwoo and says, well, even if they summon the demon from the ninth hell, Kangwoo can definitely take him down. But Kangwoo keeps thinking that he needs to find a way to prevent this summoning from happening. Gaia says it's not like that. Even with Kangwoo having Tyrion's power, she says she's not sure they can face the demon from the ninth hell, and that stopping the summoning is much easier. Kangwoo, we need to find out where they're going to perform this summoning. Kangwoo says he's already flown over the whole forest and knows a place where the cultists are likely to do it. And Kangwoo keeps thinking that what he needs to do now is buy some time. So, he says, there's a place nearby that I passed by and felt a really scary energy, because when I was using Tyrion's power, I could sense it coming from that direction. Then, they walk in that direction for 30 minutes and someone says, Kangwoo, are we close yet? He says, no, we're almost there. Let's walk a little further. Then Kimmy gets worried and says that at this pace the summoning is going to end up happening, and Gaia also shows that she's concerned and asks Kangwoo if this is really the right direction. He says yes, that they're almost there, but Kangwoo knows this isn't the right way, since they've been walking in circles for over 30 minutes. He knows he can only go around the forest at most twice. If he does it more than that, everyone will get suspicious and his credibility will be completely ruined. But then, the dense demonic energy starts to tear through the sky in front of Kangwoo, and he realizes that the summoning has finally been completed and that the great demon has just been summoned. So, Kangwoo, in a hurry, spreads his wings and says, hey, I'll go first, okay? I'll go check out what that pillar of light is. And so, arriving quickly at that place, Kangwoo realizes that a summoning is really happening, because demonic energy of that level can only mean the summoning of the demon from the ninth hell. And judging by the amount of energy, Kangwoo knows it's a great demon. So, Kangwoo, very pleased, descends at full speed to that spot, thinking that these guys have finally managed to complete the summoning. And so, arriving at that place with his mask on, he addresses all of them. Stop right there. Then, one of the cultists realizes that an intruder has just entered, but another one says, so you finally showed up, huh? But Kangwoo starts his monologue and says, hey, your evil plans end here, and to make sure I'm not recognized by any demon from the ninth hell, I put on my guardian mask and hid my demonic energy. However, Grace and Kimmy show why they're world rank and arrive at that spot immediately. But Kangwoo only wants to know one thing, who was the demon from the ninth hell that was summoned? And then, the goat Soph appears at that place and the cultists start to smile, saying that they've arrived too late. Then, very powerful horns begin to rise there. And then, the cultists say that he is already here, and now Gaia's family can no longer prevent this summoning, and you will all have a horrible death. Then, that great demon is finally summoned at that place, and all the cultists together tell everyone to worship him, because this great demon from the ninth hell is stronger than all of you. And so, we are shown that very familiar silhouette. And then, the cultists introduce this new demon as the sovereign of destruction, Balrog, the one who served the king of the ninth hell with all his soul. And what's more, this is truly an incredibly powerful demon. So, he looks around and asks, is this Earth? Then, he looks at a cultist and says, hey, who are you? The cultist answers Balrog, saying that they are mortals who desire immortality. Then, the great demon Balrog, crossing his arms, looks straight ahead, and he starts thinking, huh? What's that over there?
Then he widens his eyes and is sure of what he's seeing, because there's no way he can mistake this person. And Kangwoo starts to sweat, because it seems like Balrog has just recognized him. Balrog, falling to his knees, says that he finally managed to arrive on Earth. Then, the cultist who had summoned him is surprised, because this powerful demon who was just summoned is telling everyone that he finally got to see the king of all demons again. And so, Balrog tells Kangwoo that he heard news about him from the gatekeeper of hell and that he missed his master. And the redhead is left thinking, what? Demon King? Balrog kneels in front of Kangwoo and says, Demon King, I, Balrog, come before you to fulfill my loyalty to you. Then, Kangwoo looks back while Balrog is bowing to him and saying, Oh, Demon King, this servant greets you. Then, Kangwoo, looking back, realizes that all his friends are staring at him. Meanwhile, Balrog doesn't stop and says, My king, I missed you so much. It's been so long since I've seen you. And Kangwoo, looking back, says to everyone, Oh, this is a misunderstanding, okay? I'm not the Demon King. No, I have nothing to do with this. I don't even know who this demon is. But Balrog doesn't stop crying and starts calling out for the great Demon King. So, that's the scene. Kangwoo, super awkward, being worshipped by Balrog, who can't stop crying because he found his king. And the four back here are sweating a lot, because this situation is really embarrassing. And so, Balrog, crying tears of joy, shouts even louder, because he finally found his king, the king of the new El. And now, Kangwoo is really in a tight spot, because Balrog put him in a very embarrassing situation. He remembers that when the gatekeeper of hell showed up, he was alone with that demon, so it was pretty easy for him to handle it. But now, with Balrog summoning, it's completely different, because all his friends are here. And what's more, Kangwoo is considered a hero among them. And in this situation, he knows he could lose all of that. Kangwoo, pouting, realizes it was a huge mistake to show up there knowing that the demon from the ninth hell was going to be summoned. But what's really bothering Kangwoo is that there are a lot of demons in hell, and the ones most connected to him are Balrog, the Hell's Guard, and the lustful Lilith. And besides those three, there are over 100,000 other demons living in the ninth hell. So, Balrog keeps putting on a show, crying tears of joy at meeting his beloved king. But Kangwoo, on the other hand, keeps wondering why it had to be Balrog who was summoned at a time like this, since out of all the demons in hell, this one was the closest to him. And so, while he's sweating under the mask, he's thinking about how to explain to Balrog everything that's happening in that place. However, he knows his subordinate and realizes that this blockhead, if it were Lilith, she'd understand with just 2 words. But Balrog, even if he draws it out for him, Balrog still won't get it. So, trying to argue using double meanings just isn't going to work with Balrog. So, Kangwoo comes up with a brilliant idea, pretend to be innocent and says, Hey guys, look, this is definitely some demon scheme. Whether I'm the Demon King or not, how would this demon even recognize me with a mask on? And Kimmy, being very naive, says that makes sense. Meanwhile, Gaia, who's blind, asks Grace, Wait, Grace, is he wearing a mask? Grace says yes, that Kangwoo is wearing a mask. Kimmy, trusting her friend, believes Kangwoo right away, because she's sure this is some cunning scheme by the demons against him. Kangwoo also says he's really confused about what's going on, but Kimmy doesn't stop there and says that what Kangwoo is saying makes perfect sense, because how could the demon he saw for the first time be calling him the Demon King? And just like that, Kimmy is already convinced, and while smiling at the situation, he says, Yeah, that demon probably doesn't even know your name, even if we ask him. And Kangwoo, looking back and then forward, finds himself in a dead end, hoping that Balrog can make sense of what's going on. Then, when the cultists say to Balrog, Sovereign Destroyer, that one over there is a relative of the Earth God, so this must be a mistake, because he is part of the family of the goddess Gaia, he definitely isn't the demon god. And so, the cultist, pointing at Kangwoo, says to Balrog, and furthermore, Lord of Destruction, that man has been one of the biggest obstacles to our plan. So please, get rid of him and the entire family of the goddess. And Balrog, upon hearing this, stands still for a few seconds without saying anything, while Kangwoo is thinking to himself, Come on, Balrog, understand what's going on, do your part. Kangwoo realizes that Balrog seems to be understanding something, and so, little Kangwoo is happy on the inside, because after several seconds, Balrog starts to move, and thus, the Sovereign of Destruction, Balrog, opens a dimensional rift and pulls out a mythical weapon. And he says, How dare he say that? Then the cultists, thinking that Balrog was going to attack Kangwoo, don't even have time to say ouch, because those two who were accusing Kangwoo are sliced to pieces and burned by the hellfire of that weapon. And so, Balrog, with much hatred in his heart, asks how they dare speak that way about his master. And then, frightened cultist number 3 says, Balrog, why are you attacking us? And Balrog, full of rage, looks back at them and says, Did you say it was a mistake? Then, say again that it was a mistake, that this one in front of me is not the Demon King, because that insolent one who barely had his day just now said he is a subordinate of the goddess of the earth. The cultists, all trembling, say yes, that the one standing there is definitely from the goddess's family. And Balrog, cracking his whip, says to the cultists, Yeah, you guys are in a hurry to die, huh? Who's going to be first? Hey, humans, I expected more from you. You say you serve the demons. So how come you don't recognize the king of all demons? And Kangwoo even loses the color in his eyes when he hears this. Meanwhile, the redhead observes that this must be the eternal conflict between the demon cult and the demons themselves. And then, another one said, yeah, he really is from the goddess's family. Balrog, seething with hatred, raises his mythical whip and says to them, ah, you damn bastard, you asked for this, didn't you? And so, the whip begins to sing. Wherever that whip strikes, hellfire is scattered in all directions. And after that lash, 4 more cultists are hit by the infernal flames. And then, it's just gnashing of teeth and screaming. Being burned alive must be incredibly painful. But Balrog doesn't feel the slightest bit of remorse and says, listen carefully, humans. That one back there, look, he's the Demon King. He's the true king who rules over the infernal name. And Kangwoo, upon hearing this, even puts his hand to his face, because Balrog, besides not attacking him, kills anyone who dares to speak ill of him. And speaking of Kangwoo, Balrog says that he fought against the 7 princes of hell and defeated them all. And after that, he has ruled the entire demon realm ever since. Chimi and the redhead don't even know what to say after hearing these stories about Kangwoo. But as bad as things are, they can always get worse. And so, Balrog tells the cultists, and the name of the Demon King is Ho-Kan-Hu. Then Kangwoo almost has a fit and says, what? You son of a bitch. How can you just say my name like that? And then, Chan Mojin says, huh, how does he know his name? Cholam, in turn, asks Kangwoo what's going on. Meanwhile, Sweet Alice just says the name of her beloved. And incredibly, little Edna isn't doing anything, because she's smart and knows her master can get out of this situation, so she just stays there, cuddled up with Mama Alice. Then Chimi says to Kangwoo, hey, Kangwoo, how does this demon know your name? Meanwhile, the redhead says Kangwoo's full name, Ho-Kan-Hu. Something's not right, and our hero is there, sweating profusely. Why did that Balrog bastard decide to say his name? Now, a demon that was just summoned, calling me by my name? I don't even know what to do to hide now. And so, Kangwoo keeps talking to himself. Yeah, what do I do now? Huh, what should I do? But the cultist realizes there's no other way. So, he puts his hands on the ground and starts a very sinister chant. And then he says, Lord of Evil, give us the power to control these demons. And as he says this, a dense darkness starts to spread from beneath him and moves toward that demon. And the other demonic cultists who are still alive start chanting the same chant. Oh, Lord of Evil, give us the power to control demons. And one after another, they begin to intone this macabre chant. Then, a great circle of domination appears at that spot, and all those 20 demonic cultists join together as if they were one, invoking the seal of domination. And Balrog, right there in the middle, realizes that something is not quite right. Then, Balrog asks the cultists, hey, what are you guys doing? But Kangwoo becomes alert, because he notices that the cultists have taken a step forward. Then, at that moment, a great circle of domination appears on Balrog's back, and this domination is forced upon him, causing Balrog extreme pain. Then, that tall demon starts screaming in pain. And Kangwoo quickly realizes that it's a magic circle. Then he remembers the first time he saw that black magic circle, because it was on the forehead of that chrysalis and it left her completely subjugated to the orders of the demonic cult. However, Kangwoo starts wondering if that magic circle wasn't just for controlling demonic monsters, because Balrog isn't a demonic monster, he's a demon. And there's a huge difference between them, because when Kangwoo was in hell, not even when he had all his power was he able to control Balrog, let alone the demonic order. So, Balrog, seething with rage, looks back at them and says, how dare you? You think you can control me? And then, the whip starts to crack. And so, 8 more demonic cultists are sent to hell, burned to the bone by demonic fire. But as they're being burned, one says to the other, keep the spell going, don't stop the chant. Even as they're dying, they keep up the incantation. Balrog feels the force of subjugation. Kangwoo, seeing this, thinks, why is Balrog fighting back? He just needs to stand still and let himself be controlled. And if he does that, no one will notice anything. But Balrog, feeling the greatest pain of his life, lets out a roar of agony and stays there, fighting not to be controlled. Kangwoo realizes that if Balrog keeps this up, he will definitely die, because the force of that subjugation is almost impossible to resist. And so, Balrog is on the verge of death. But Kangwoo has a brilliant idea. He thinks, well, since he's just standing there, I'll run towards him and defeat him before that happens. His subjugation was almost complete and Balrog's eye even changed color, and he notices when that rat is coming quickly towards him. So, when Kangwoo blinked, the blazing strike was already right in his face. Then, Kangwoo took such a brutal whip to the chest that he went flying backwards at full speed. That was basically like a kick, because just the impact from that attack made me take a lot of damage. And so, Kangwoo starts cursing Balrog, that damn crazy musclehead. Then, Kangwoo starts thinking about what he can do to take Balrog down. But then, he notices that Balrog's pupil isn't completely black anymore and wonders, why is he making that face? Then Balrog says, what have I done to the Demon King? Why did I attack him? Then Balrog tells himself that instead of hurting his master, he's going to put an end to this right now. And so, with his hands shaking, Balrog starts gathering a huge amount of power in his hands. But Kangwoo, seeing this, realizes that Balrog is aiming all that energy in the palm of his hands at his own face, and that if Balrog hits himself with that blow, he'll definitely blow his own head off. But then he looks back, noticing that everyone there is watching him. Even so, Kangwoo knows he has to stop Balrog before he takes his own life. Then, looking the other way, Kangwoo realizes there is no way out, that now that he's arrived on Earth and settled in, making lots of friends, he can't lose all of that. And realizing that there's no turning back from this situation, Kangwoo watches Balrog and notices that he's about to activate that skill. With that, Kangwoo thinks there's only one way out to solve this. So, gritting his teeth, he knows he has to give up on Balrog, because there's no other way. And when Balrog kills himself, Kangwoo keeps thinking that after that, things will be easy. He just has to blame the demonic cult and say it was all part of their plan. But Kangwoo remembers his servant Balrog doing everything to please him, saying, "Hey boss, I brought you some really fresh food. Look, it's even still moving. You're going to love it." And Kangwoo also remembers that Balrog was his most loyal servant and says to him, "Fresh food. Then here, open your mouth and close your eyes. I don't want that stuff." And with that, Kangwoo also remembers the great Balrog, who was once one of the strongest beings in the 9 hells and his most loyal servant. So, Kangwoo isn't just going to stand there. He sprints toward Balrog, thinking to himself, everything went wrong, everything went wrong. Balrog is close to performing the sacrificial ritual, ending his life with this deadly skill. But Kangwoo says to him, "Balrog, you maniac, what do you think you're doing?" So, Kangwoo charges at Balrog, because this damn idiot is really dumb, he can't even understand what's going on. And so, Kangwoo activates a power in his legs, because to hit this demon, he needs to land a really strong blow on him. And so, Kangwoo kicks Balrog really hard in the head and says to him, "Hey, you damn loser, what do you think you're doing, huh?" And Balrog gets scared and says, "Demon King?" But Kangwoo doesn't stop and tells him, "Hey, that mark on your back is going to disappear soon, so don't do anything, you idiot, just stay put." But Balrog tries to talk back to his master and says, but Boss Kangwoo, really angry, yells at him, "Hey, you bastard, since when do you disobey my orders? This is an order, stay right there." So Balrog, apologizing to his master, starts whipping himself because his body is moving even against his will. Kangwoo knows that Balrog is very strong, but he also knows he can hold out against this demon for a few minutes. So, Kangwoo knows there's a way he might even be able to defeat Balrog, he just has to use that technique to open those forbidden gates that are sealed in the core of the 10,000 demons. However, Kangwoo knows there's no need for that, because he understands his servant's strength and realizes that he's using the bare minimum of force to attack him. And all of this is because he's also resisting that magic circle. So, while grabbing Balrog, Kangwoo has a brilliant idea to kill all those cultists who are trying to control him. And so, while Balrog's whip is setting everything around on fire and hitting several cultists, Kangwoo goes to the other side and kills all the other cultists who weren't struck by Balrog's lashes. And just like that, the math class becomes a beautiful sight to behold, because the cultists don't even have time to call for their mothers. Then, a short while later, silence reigns over that place and all you can see is smoke rising from the summoning site. Then, that domination symbol starts to fade from Balrog's back. Meanwhile, on the other side, all the cultists who weren't incinerated were killed by our protagonist, who decided to eliminate everyone trying to control Balrog. Then, that great demon falls to his knees, because at last the hateful domination has just come to an end. And then, the great demon of the 9th hell, Balrog, begins to speak, "Demon King, please, cut my throat, for I am a traitor who dare to raise a weapon against you." Then, Kangwoo looks back to see if the audience managed to hear that. And so, he starts to sweat, because he knows there's no way out of this now, the situation has gone way too far. And so, Gaia, after being set down, calls out Kangwoo's name. Then she says, "Kangwoo, what was that conversation you just had with that demon?" Meanwhile, Kimmy can't say anything and just utters Kangwoo's name, but the bold Kangwoo knows there's only one way to get through this situation. He knows it's not a perfect method, and it's not a very detailed plan either. However, he's going to take this gamble, because this method is about seeing how much people trust him, since Kangwoo knows he's done a lot for everyone standing before him. So, placing his hand on his chest, Kangwoo says that the situation is getting too hard to hide. Then, he tells everyone, "Yes, I am the Demon King of the 9th hell." And with that, all those listening are shocked, because they didn't expect to hear that. But the bold Kangwoo, the protagonist of our story, tells everyone in front of him, "Well, to be exact, I used to be the Demon King, I'm not anymore." And that's where we'll leave it for now. If you enjoyed it, ask for part 24, and I'll bring part 24. I've never asked you for anything, and if you can, help me out with a Pix donation. And also, if you're hyped, please hype up this video for me.